Horizon Warrior immediately relayed the order to the entire team. The plan continues. However, at this moment, everyone's mindset had completely changed. Initially, it was their first time piloting the hunter mechs, and they were heading straight to the enemy's doorstep. Even though these were carefully selected warriors, they couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. If something went wrong and the plan failed, they would feel ashamed. But now, seeing the firepower configuration of the Crimson Storm, did the monsters really think they could get close? That seemed quite difficult. Since there were no more worries, let's charge ahead. Compared to the beginning, Fang Jing and the others' advance speed had noticeably increased several times. In the deep sea, through a gap bursting with blue light, at the advanced base of the Forerunners, Hellro, a Forerunner resembling a lobster, wore a confused expression. The miscellaneous fish monster they had just deployed had clearly been sent out. Why had the link with the main brain disappeared? According to the situation on the opposite side, they had just exited the wormhole and had not yet landed. How could it have already died? Hellro was certain that the miscellaneous fish monster was dead. Right at the entrance, it was killed. Get the main brain to read its residual information and find out what happened. Hellro snorted coldly. This period was crucial for continuing the invasion plan, and it absolutely could not allow any mistakes on its part. The main brain completed the sensory connection, and the memory showed that the miscellaneous fish monster was killed at the entrance. At the entrance, plasma cannons blasted away, targeting the 12 mechs that were huddled together. Humans, those who seek death, we haven't even become impatient yet, and you dare to come knocking on our door. Hellro snorted again. These humans are truly courting death. If the Forerunners really wanted to occupy this planet immediately, they would have done it long ago. The reason they kept sending monsters was to give the enemy experience points, as they needed the monster's blood to transform the environment of this habitable planet to make it suitable for their habitation. And the result? We weren't in a hurry. Yet you insects were eager to come and die. Since you seek death, let me fulfill your wish. Hellro waved its claws and input the command. In the distance, a massive meatball was being transported, with rows of ferocious monsters being delivered. To everyone's surprise, all of them were level 5 monsters. A total of 12. This was in preparation for the approaching humans. 12 mechas were deployed, marking what was likely the largest offensive in human history. Unfortunately, these monsters would completely shatter your hopes. Hellro laughed coldly, his laughter echoing wildly. Chapter 221. Don't come over. In the dark and deep seabed of the Pacific Rim, a 12-member mecha squad continued to advance in a turtle shell formation. With the powerful firepower of the Crimson Storm, they felt more confident. Their steps were a bit lighter. This was the Pacific seabed, where darkness reigned and only a few creatures managed to survive. At this depth, there was not even a trace of aquatic plants in the mud. The absence of life made things easier for the squad, as there were fewer disturbances for the biological detectors. However, disturbances were not entirely absent. Beep beep beep. Detection of monster energy? The Horizon Warrior suddenly tensed up, and the detector in his hand began to spin. But the energy level was too low, barely reaching single digits. The biological detector was a product developed in cooperation with the Engineer Tribe in this universe and the Kyushu world. It utilized monster samples combined with the technology of the Engineer Tribe to create an instrument specifically for detecting monsters. This device was highly precise and sensitive, generally showing a constant energy level when detecting monsters. For example, a level 1 monster would show a value of 10,000. A level 2 monster would show 20,000, adding up sequentially. What puzzled the Horizon Warrior was the situation regarding this energy level in single digits. Miniature monsters? Immediately initiate scanning. Fang Jing furrowed his brow and ordered coldly. He recalled a concerning hypothesis made by Hellrose. The locking was in progress, and the location had been determined. The pilot of the Horizon Warrior locked onto the signal source, and a spherical unmanned detector was immediately launched. According to the signal source, the unmanned detector began its journey. Upon reaching the designated location, the unmanned detector was locking onto the biological target. Confirmed. The pilot of the Horizon Warrior received the signal transmitted back from the unmanned detector and immediately began to analyze and play it back. As a result, upon seeing the creature in the video, his pupils constricted sharply. How could this be? How could this happen? Horizon Warrior, report the situation. In the communication channel, Fang Jing heard a voice, and his heart sank as he immediately inquired. Report. The biological wave emitted by the monster originates from a native Earth organism. The bear sea butterfly. The Horizon Warrior's voice had trembled earlier, but it was now calm. Not only native organisms, but even some microorganisms had begun to exhibit the biological waves of monsters. Fang Jing's expression tightened. Hellrose's speculation after examining the monster blood samples was indeed correct. The Pioneer Tribe was indeed altering the Earth's environment with the help of monsters. The blue toxin from these monsters served as a growth medium. They utilized these culture media to induce changes in animals and microorganisms contaminated by the monster blue. This intricate biological fluctuation is currently undetectable by humans. If it weren't for the Engineer clan, even this universe and the 9 provinces world wouldn't have noticed it. The key point is that these culture media can alter microorganisms. Holo speculated that it could even change the chlorophyll in plants. Fang Jing gritted his teeth. The Pioneer Tribe, the Lobster People, and biological civilizations are indeed quite cunning. The more monsters humans kill, the more the ocean is polluted by monster blue, accelerating the transformation of algae in the Pacific, leading to human extinction at a faster rate. Humans, did I just kill myself? Moreover, the most critical point is that even if the wormhole is destroyed, these modified advantageous species affected by Monster Blue, lurking in the deep sea, will gradually gain the upper hand. Even more terrifying is that these changes represent living biological coordinates. The opponent will return. However, we are here. Fang Jing's gaze turned fierce. Playing tricks, huh? Now, we are here, and you won't succeed. Feel the weight of the 3 worlds. No. This universe, plus the 9 provinces, cannot crush the pioneers. In that case, let us feel the weight of the 3 worlds along with the Engineer clan. Let the Horizon Warriors save the data well, so we can continue to recruit investment after coming ashore. After tidying up, Fang Jing coldly said, continue advancing. Having learned of the recent discovery, the entire raid team was filled with a surge of anger. Previously, monsters attacked randomly, but now, discovering these despicable pioneers, they were indiscriminately poisoning. How can this be tolerated? The 12 warriors tightened their grips on their shields and various devices. Let us go. Indiscriminate poisoning cannot be tolerated. We must fight with all our might. The team continued to advance, descending along the seabed. Soon, a gap emitting a ghostly blue light in the distant trench caught the team's attention. It was very dark all around, with limited visibility from the searchlights, but fortunately, the gap emitted its own light, complemented by occasional lava bursts from the fissures. In the darkness, they could just lock onto the gap. The entire team was still 2 kilometers away from the gap. The Horizon Warriors cautiously led the team, with their detectors spinning rapidly, bubbling, and almost resembling a propeller. No alarms, no monsters nearby. We quickly completed our task. After advancing nearly 500 meters, the detector remained silent. The seabed was eerily quiet. The Horizon Warrior breathed a sigh of relief. Beep, beep, beep. However, before he could fully relax, the detector suddenly emitted an alarm. Shocked, he quickly looked down and shouted, Level 5 monster. It's coming out of the gap. And not just one. We can see it. Meanwhile, the extreme cold flying army pressed down, their shields planted in the soil. From the moment the detector alarm went off, their gaze had been locked onto the gap. Sure enough, from the gap of deep blue and faint red, enormous, grotesque monsters surged out immediately. And not just 1, 2, 3, and they kept pouring out. Give me the gun. Fang Jing shouted angrily, raising the open-type cannon in his hand, resting the barrel on the shoulder of the ground warrior. The cold muzzle extended through the gap, deliberately opened between 2 shields. While his teammates were still organizing their formation and preparing to attack, and the ground monsters seemed ready to surge out even more, Fang Jing decisively disengaged the safety and pressed the trigger to the floor. A burst of electric arcs flashed blue light underwater, followed by a fiery blue plasma ball that suddenly erupted from the barrel, charging directly toward the gap above. The moment the plasma ball left the chamber, the seawater began to boil and surge. Above the gap, the 4th monster, Lanos, had just emerged, and a plasma ball, hot enough to instill fear in any living being, whizzed past its head. That plasma ball, no death, passed just a few dozen meters from its head. The next second, another plasma ball flew overhead. 1 second later, another, and another. The continuously boiling seawater kept it rooted in place. Should I go out or not? What's happening outside? It's crazy. Are plasma balls flying around like this? However, it was no longer up to it to decide whether to go out, because the 5th monster, Panlos, was already charging towards it. Panlos, I'm coming. Lanos, don't come over here. Ah. Chapter 222. What is this thing falling from the sky? Lanos felt despair, true despair, just as it peeked out from the gap. Plasma balls were being fired at a rate of 1 per second above its head. Does it think this is a fireworks display, continuously shooting? Just as it decided to stay at the gap for a moment to see clearly, Panlos charged in, ready to wreak havoc and dominate the battlefield. Panlos foolishly crashed straight into it. Thus, poor Lanos was knocked out. Once outside, it slid through the water for dozens of meters. Even the big Panlos continued to charge after it like nothing happened. This fool, didn't he realize what he just crashed into? Lanos widened its beastly eyes, roaring in its heart. This is bad. Above there are plasma balls flying. Then, Lanos and Panlos saw a blue glowing plasma ball hurtling towards them. It was coming for Lanos. Despair showed in Lanos' eyes as it stared at Panlos, its beastly mouth opening and closing. Boom. It was directly blown into 2 pieces. Blue blood instantly stained the seawater. Panlos turned its head to look. Even if it was foolish, seeing a kindred spirit explode right beside it, it was now completely awake. Damn, this temperature, this power, run. But it's futile, as there's only a second to escape. The next shot, the next second, another plasma ball comes flying in. Penrose, die. To be honest, these monsters are a bit stupid. Fang Jing takes down a level 5 monster that was trying to escape, sniffs his nose, and continues to pull the trigger expressionlessly. What's going on, little brother? Daring to crawl out from the gap in front of us. They didn't dare before. But now we'll blow you away. If it weren't for the first 2 that came out too quickly, we would have dealt with you together. Stay alert. There are still 2 level 5 monsters outside. A warning sounds from the Horizon Warriors. Behind the huge shield in the turtle formation, 11 mechs with massive mechanical arms spin. Their plasma cannons eager for action. 11 against 2. How can we lose? And Fang Jing is still firing. He pressed the trigger all the way down. Monsters are still monsters. They have no intelligence at all. The 8 that continue to dart out towards the gap are directly turned into skewers by Fang Jing. One pops up, one gets blasted. The soil around the gap is dyed blue. This continues until Fang Jing finishes this magazine. The barrel is starting to glow red. The seawater is churning wildly, and a huge round canister at the grip of the open plasma cannon slides down with a click. Fang Jing glances at the sound detector. Should have killed 10, as the detector only recorded 10 screams. Same frequency. Change the magazine. Change the magazine. With this firepower, whatever comes will kneel. With an expressionless operation of the mech, Fang Jing coldly controls the Crimson Storm to start reloading. His heart is cold now. This mech battling monsters doesn't feel right at all. Whereas the adrenaline of a close fight. Hot weapons truly have no soul. As soon as the trigger is pulled, the other side can only scream before turning into a mist of blood. Boring. However, at that moment, during this precious time of reloading, the two monsters that had earlier dashed out from the gap, Dugong and Sheila, kick off with afterimages. Their tails thrash wildly, their bodies twisting like fish. Their terrifying expressions now even more horrifying with excitement. Their essay flaw. The two monsters had been trembling in the corner amidst the gunfire. No, they were waiting for the enemy to run low on ammunition. Now, with the enemy's terrifying weaponry on ceasefire, their opportunity has come. Hee. No, roar, 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 die. The excitement on the faces of the two monsters twists into a blur. They have charged to the front. And the turtle formation made up of 12 mechs is now clearly in their sights. It's just an iron shield. How can it defend against us? Wait, roar? Sheila's large beastly eyes suddenly narrow, and Dugong turns to run. Damn, it's not just an iron shield. Behind that shield, there is also a plasma cannon ready to fire. What a surprise. You should have mentioned the ammunition earlier. Hee. The pilot of the extreme cold flying army is grinning from ear to ear. It's truly a case of walking into a trap without anyone around. Since you're here, why not take something with you? Here, I'll give you 2 rounds of ion cannons. Bang bang. The extreme cold flying army wasted no time and fired 2 shots in quick succession. The speed of the snow chariot was astonishing, hitting the target perfectly. Meanwhile, the snowy peak also raised its weapon and fired 2 shots, precisely striking the creature, sending it away. In this way, the 12 monsters that suddenly emerged from the gap were dispatched in such a humiliating manner. At the outpost of the Vanguard clan, at the entrance of the wormhole, Hellrose stood there, sneering. After 7 Earth years, these foolish humans dared to send more people to storm the gap again. Have they really forgotten the casualties from last time? Since they've forgotten, let me remind them properly. Haha. Suddenly, an excited thought crossed Hellruo's mind, causing its pincers and body to tremble with suppressed excitement. 12 grotesque monsters were enough to handle these pathetic mechanical creations. The creatures on this planet are simply too weak, too weak. We only had to make a slight move for 11 Earth years. Mentioning those 11 Earth years made Hellruo furious. Their strategy was to let these monsters wreak havoc on Earth, preferably causing massive casualties in populated areas. Yet, after 11 years, apart from some initial success, they never achieved their goals. It wasn't until a few months ago that the Vanguard clan suddenly realized that simply changing direction could yield the desired results. All these years, they had been targeting the strongest group of these creatures. Damn it, I will make you suffer. Hellruo was extremely angry, already envisioning how the 12 level 5 monsters would mercilessly torment those ugly mechanical creations. Among them, the Snow Chariot even had the ability to unleash biological electromagnetic pulses. Once this ability was used, what could the opponent do? What could they do? This time, it intended to destroy all the mechanical creations sent by humans right at the entrance of the wormhole. Ha ha ha. With a laugh characteristic of the Vanguard clan, Hellruo felt immensely pleased, as if it could already sense the fear of those humans. Just then, as it reveled in its triumph, something suddenly plummeted from the sky. Was this something thrown in from the wormhole? What could it be? Hellruo looked down in confusion and was startled. What the heck is this? It was a half-bloody monster body. Hellruo quickly looked up at the opening of the wormhole. No, what is going on? Chapter 223. You're collecting way too fast. Hellruo was laughing mockingly at the Vanguard clan's outpost. Suddenly, a bloody half-body fell from above the wormhole, leaving it speechless. The key point is, if it were just that, it would be manageable. After all, with 12 against 12, losing a few monsters is normal. However, what happened next left it stunned, because it wasn't just half of one, but 2 halves. First, the lower half, then the upper half. The crucial part is that these halves didn't belong to just one monster. What on earth was happening? Splash. Splash. Then, a mass of flesh tumbled out from the wormhole. It wasn't just one monster. Splash, splash, splash. More kept falling. The whole body of Hellruo trembled. In front of it, the flesh had already piled up into a small mountain, all of it dropping out from the wormhole. Counting carefully, aside from Dugong and Sheila, they had all appeared. Not one less, exactly 10. But these 10 monsters had all been reduced to fragments. Are you humans installing a meat grinder at the exit of the wormhole? One comes out, and one gets minced. Hellruo looked at the mountain of flesh and could no longer hold back its fury. It wanted humanity to pay the price. With an angry glare at the ovary beside the wormhole, Hellruo steeled its heart and waved its claws. Boom. Immediately, 5 ferocious monsters emerged. These 5 monsters looked very strange, with extremely thick bones on their abdomen, limbs, back, vital points, and heads. The bones were robust and looked very solid. These were the 6th level monsters it had created. They were prepared for a full-scale attack after a year on Earth, once the testing phase ended. Such monsters could be produced in just a minute once the production line was established. When that time comes, swarms of monsters would make humanity feel what true despair is. It's fine. I haven't violated the herding rules. I'm just guarding the wormhole, and these monsters won't attack directly. Halawa's gaze was cold and sharp. After this operation, there would be no evidence left, and no one would know it had broken the rules. You all move out, pointing at the 5-6 level monsters. It immediately issued the command. Roar. The 5-6 level monsters immediately took steps toward the wormhole. Crossing through the wormhole meant it was time for slaughter. The monsters, with extremely heavy skulls and bodies covered in hard scales, charged forward. Their scales were the culmination of 11 years of research by the Pioneer clan on human weaponry. They were specifically designed to counter humanity, born for slaughter and destruction. At the underwater rift in the Pacific, Fang Jing stepped onto the wormhole's edge under the escort of the turtle shell array. Almost instantly, Fang Jing felt a sense of accomplishment. As for why he didn't faint, it was because the conditions to trigger the spatial door in a non-node universe had to be met by returning to the node universe to faint. In other words, once he crossed back, he would fall asleep immediately. Task accomplished. Actually, they could leave now, but they had to play their parts to the fullest. He pretended to hold a device and collected some data. Collecting data on wormholes, right? Even if I'm just waving this gun around. How do you know that this high-tech gun doesn't have a spatial coordinate detector installed at the muzzle? Kid, do you understand high-tech from a parallel universe? The commandos really didn't understand. They quietly guarded around the Red Storm mech. Moreover, they instinctively thought that collecting data would take a long time. They were prepared for a protracted battle. In reality, they hadn't even been there for a minute when the collection was complete. Fang Jing coughed lightly. His face calm and heart steady, lying with ease. Huh. The Horizon Warriors, Extreme Cold Air Force, and Snowfield Peak pilots were all taken aback. That's it. This is data collection on wormholes, not on how sweet sugar is. It finished that quickly? This seems a bit hasty. Right, let us get going. Fang Jing's tone was firm and assured. I understand it, or you do, but if I say it's done, then it's done. All right, everyone, prepare to retreat. The Horizon Warriors nodded vigorously. Since the mission was complete, they needed to retreat quickly. This breach was very unusual. Usually, a monster would appear every few weeks, but suddenly, more than a dozen had just emerged. Who knows if more will come out later. Retreat, retreat. They must report the issue of local Earth creatures being infected by the monsters. This breach is suspicious. We must keep a close watch on it in the future. The team immediately acted. They had moved slowly due to caution on the way in, but now that they were leaving, they quickened their pace several times. However, after covering just a kilometer, suddenly, a high-frequency blue light erupted from the breach. Something released a strong electromagnetic pulse from the breach. The intense pulse surged forward, maintaining its power even underwater. This was specially made by the Pioneer clan. It could be released in water without any loss. The pulsing wave shot forth, almost instantly reaching Fang Jing and the others. As the blue light flashed, a deafening roar echoed in the sound wave channel. Roar. With that roar, 4 massive figures simultaneously flew out from the breach. It was coordinated. These monsters actually used skill synergy. The 4 figures rushed out of the breach without hesitation, charging directly towards the formation based on their tracks. Meanwhile, the last monster, seemingly delayed, slowly crawled out from the breach. It floated to a distant stone peak, its head resembling a blooming flower, with ghostly blue light continuously bursting forth from this flower. Circles of high-energy pulses continued to surge in. The electromagnetic pulse was emitted by this monster. It aimed to completely destroy the electronic components of the enemy mechs. At the same time, the 4 terrifying monsters moved swiftly in the water. They had already reached the front of the formation. Howl! The giant beast, with excitement bursting from its eyes, suddenly lowered its head, aiming its horns directly at the opponent's shield. The opponent had not reacted for so long. They must have been incapacitated by the electromagnetic pulse. The opportunity has come. It was about to collide. Its horns could pierce through the opponent's mech. Prepare to meet your end. The distance was now only a few meters. Closer. Closer. In that instant, the Horizon Warrior, who was covering the rear of the team, moved. In the bewildered gaze of the giant beast, the Horizon Warrior suddenly swung his shield, unleashing unmatched power from 60 muscle engines. Using the shield like a hammer, he struck the side of the giant beast's head. Bang! This blow left the beast dazed. No, my teammate is behind using an electromagnetic pulse. That's an electromagnetic pulse. This is their trump card. Give me some reaction, man. The Horizon Warrior continued to hammer the beast's head with 2 shields, saying, You're dumbfounded, huh? I have anti-electromagnetic pulse armor. Chapter 224. My sword is not without merit. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, the Horizon Warrior repelled the attacking giant beast. The pilot, seeing the biological detector that only went off upon contact with the monster and the energy levels displayed, narrowed his eyes and sternly warned, Level 6 monster. The opponent had concealed its biological fluctuations and released an electromagnetic pulse. They came prepared. Stay alert. Electromagnetic pulse. At first, several pilots couldn't understand. What does a mech for fighting monsters need anti-electromagnetic pulse armor for? It wasn't until this moment that they realized these damned monsters could actually use electromagnetic pulses. They broke into a cold sweat, suddenly enlightened. That was close. If it weren't for this armor technology, they would all be doomed here. Arm your guns. Fang Jing coldly readied his open ion cannon. No matter the level of the monster, let it try my barrage first. ZZZZ. The seawater, in that instant, felt boiling again. The superheated ion ball shot toward the monster. Roar. The temporarily retreating beast, having been hit by the shield, sensed a crisis. It immediately notified its teammates with a sound wave, then suddenly sat down on the ocean floor. At the same time, its limbs, head, abdomen, vital points, and the thick bones on its chest connected together. The outer bones of this monster actually formed a shield. In an instant, four monsters immediately formed a formation. The turtle formation. Well, a turtle formation against a turtle formation, huh? No matter, just fire. A strange glint flashed in Fang Jing's eyes. He never expected the monster could play like this. Aiming at those massive level 6 beasts, Fang Jing, as per routine, pulled the trigger all the way down. The searing ion ball once again shot out. But this time, facing the monster's formidable bone shield, the searing ion ball hit a wall. Boom. A deafening roar echoed underwater. The intense light and heat instantly stirred up the sediment that had settled on the seabed. After a relentless barrage lasting a full minute, 100 shots were fired before Fang Jing finally released the trigger. They should be dead now. With 100 shots from an ion cannon, there's no way any base-level life form could withstand that. If it were a level 5 beast, the area hit would have been reduced to nothing but dust, while the untouched areas would have turned into a monstrous soup. It's highly likely they are dead. The pilot of the Horizon Warrior exhaled, his tone lacking confidence. After all, since the enemy dared to take a defensive stance, they might still be able to withstand it. But how could they survive the millions of degrees of heat? Regardless, stay alert. Fang Jing squinted, not lowering his weapon just yet. Moreover, the visibility ahead was obstructed. The level 6 monster's infrared detection, biological detection, and life detection methods were all ineffective. We need to retreat to an area with clear visibility. Now, the soil was already stirred up due to the ion cannon. Visibility was hindered, and if he were the protagonist in a movie, he might have sent someone in to check. But who is Fang Jing? He embodies the serious and cautious spirit passed down from the experts of Project 237. Without hesitation, he organized his team and ordered them to maintain their combat formation while retreating. As long as there's distance between me and the area of visibility obstruction, they won't be able to get a clear shot at me. The disturbed soil continued to churn. The entire sea area fell silent. It seemed that these level 6 monsters were truly dead. A minute passed without any movement. 2 minutes went by, and still nothing. Were they really dead? Fang Jing was quite skeptical. After his encounter with Holos, he understood that those involved with biological matters were seasoned veterans. Besides the conventional means of communication, they surely had other methods of biological communication. Therefore, knowing they could easily annihilate a team of level 5 beasts, he didn't believe the pioneer race would send out mere cannon fodder. These level 6 monsters were likely still alive. Horizon. Deploy an unmanned probe and simulate your mecha signal. Fang Jing squinted, a spark of inspiration hitting him. Yes, the Horizon Warrior received the command, and the armor on his chest immediately opened. A large metallic unmanned probe shot out. Soon after, the probe emitted signals that were identical to those of the Horizon Warrior's mecha. This is electronic warfare against the monsters. The unmanned probe sped forward, quickly reaching the edge of the disturbed soil. Still, there was no sign of movement. Could they really be dead? Even Fang Jing began to doubt it. However, just for a moment, there was movement in the soil. The level 6 monster, Thonies, which had been lying in wait for so long, sensed the mecha signal and was overwhelmed with joy. With a roar, it burst out. Raising its head and opening its massive jaws, it crushed the metal probe into pieces. Ha ha ha, little human cubs. What a surprise, we weren't blown to bits. Tornus has envisioned the scene ahead, where human faces are surely filled with anger over lost comrades and shock at their survival. I, Tornus, will completely annihilate these daring creatures that challenge the wormhole. Wait, something feels off. Tornus notices an unusual sensation in its mouth, completely different from the memories of biting into mechs before. Why is it so crunchy and so small? Confused, it lowers its beastly head and stares down. Where's the mech I bit? Such a large mech. Wait, if it's not here, then... Tornus suddenly looks up, stunned, its enormous eyes awkwardly blinking. It turns out the human mech group is even farther away from the mud and sand. So, the humans were just standing there, watching it act like a silly dog? A flock of crows cawed past. Is that monster stupid? Although the fact that a level 6 monster could withstand an ion cannon shocked them, this creature's antics with the metallic sphere were undeniably foolish. This is problematic. If the enemy can withstand the ion cannon, how can we penetrate its defense? The mud and sand dispersed. Everyone began to understand how these level 6 monsters were able to block the ion cannon. It turned out that these monsters had thick, bony structures resembling bone spurs. And inside was a special type of metal. The surface of that metal had massive magnetic fields, deflecting the plasma. Fang Jing snorted. So, this level 6 monster even has a magnetic shield. The pilot of the extreme cold flying army frowned tightly. What now? The enemy's shield completely counters the ion cannon. The Horizon Warrior tightened their grip on the shield and declared loudly, "We can only engage in close combat now. Everyone, don't forget the mission. We must ensure the safe return of the Crimson Storm." Yes, the 10 pilot hunters all canceled their plasma cannons and instead gripped the handles of their shields. With ranged weapons ineffective, they readied their bayonets. For a moment, the atmosphere turned strangely solemn. However, Fang Jing smiled broadly. He gently set down the open ion cannon in his hands, reached behind him with his right hand, and stepped forward, pushing aside the leading Horizon warrior with his left hand. No need to retreat. You all hold the shields and cover me. Clang. The sword was drawn. He wanted to see whether the monster's magnetic shield was tougher or his sword sharper. My sword is not without its advantages either. Chapter 225. One sword, two segments. Deep beneath the sea, the searchlights of 12 mechs illuminated a bright area. However, due to the depths of the ocean, the water's barrier prevented the light from covering a large area. Ahead, there was still a stretch of darkness. With the ion cannon completely countered, Fong Jing moved. And the Crimson Storm moved. The Horizon Warriors, Extreme Cold Flying Army, and Snowy Peak all stepped forward, holding their shields with both hands. The nearly 40-meter-long shield immediately protected the Crimson Storm from three sides. Behind them, the remaining members quickly drew their weapons and followed suit. In the dim waters, sediments occasionally stirred into the light. Trottens suddenly turned around, darting out of sight. At that moment, it was filled with anger. How dare these little creatures toy with it? If a sneak attack wouldn't work, then it would charge head-on. A roar echoed through the water. The meaning of this roar was clear. Whoever was behind still firing electromagnetic pulses should come forward. It wasn't he going to fall for that. Prepare to gather and go in hard. Roar. Surrounding it, 5 level 6 monsters completed their formation through sound wave positioning. With their massive and fierce bodies, they suddenly turned their heads sharply. Trottens led the charge, raising its heavy shield and rushing forward, aiming straight for the opposing formation of Horizon Warriors. Beside it, 4 monsters formed a V-shaped lineup, lowering their heads to showcase their sharp horns. They intended to crush the opponents completely. Here they come. The monsters had entered the illuminated area, clearly visible to everyone. We'll hold them off. The Horizon Warriors, holding their shields with both hands, braced themselves for the impact. Their shields were no ordinary shields. Hold. Boom. A violent collision occurred at the seabed. The sharp bone horns of the level 6 monsters were indeed deadly. But they still hadn't completely pierced through the shields. Only the tips of the sharp horns managed to penetrate the shields. The tremendous force left 2 massive scratches on the ground from the mech's legs. Looking for death. At that moment, Fong Jing finally moved. Now was the time. Just as the level 6 monsters were pulling back, preparing to charge again, the Crimson Storm wielded a silver sword, moving exceptionally agilely through the chaos. Fong Jing stood in the cockpit, holding a sensing sword, his eyes glowing. This sword of mine is no ordinary sword. Let us see if the monster can handle this. Roar. After the collision, Trottens faced the Horizon Warrior who was blocking it, swinging a blunt object to strike its head, letting out an angry roar. It swung its body, its massive jaws biting down on the Horizon Warrior's large iron hammer. Opportunity. Fong Jing, maneuvering on the outer circle, was best at seizing opportunities. Without hesitation, he leaped high, blue plasma jets bursting from his back. The Crimson Storm sped closer, just as Trottens was about to claw at the Horizon Warrior's arm with its sharp paws. A sword blade, illuminated by the light, came crashing down. The Crimson Storm jumped high, raising both hands, and at the moment of the downward strike, plasma jets erupted furiously from the elbow ports. The immense boost made the sword light shimmer in the water, exceptionally dazzling. Take this. The sword light flashed. Trotten's eyes widened. Hey, I don't think I'm dead. Wait, what is that? Trottens felt a dizzying spin, and then it saw a massive beast body. This beast body looked so familiar. So majestic, why does it look so much like mine? Oh no, it is mine. A glint of shock crossed Trottens' eyes. What was happening? Had it been decapitated? After beheading, it surprisingly hasn't died. Does it have such strong vitality? However, suddenly feeling very drowsy. Not far away, the Crimson Storm stands majestically with a sword in one hand. In front of him, a level 6 giant beast was beheaded with a single strike, dying on the spot. The corpse, mixed with spurting blue blood, crashed to the seabed. This sword is incredibly fast. Inside the mech cockpit, Fong Jing couldn't suppress a smile. This smile is even harder to contain than any excitement. Just now, when he wielded this high-tech sword and cut into the level 6 beast's body, it felt like cutting tofu. There was no resistance at all. Shields, scales, bones, everything was severed with just a touch. Wait, did it also slice off something else? What a sharp sword. The Horizon Warrior pilot stared at the huge, neat cut on the shield, his pupils constricting sharply. This shield is made of titanium alloy. It was so easily sliced like this by a single sword. That sword is absurdly sharp. Stop looking, come help quickly. The Extreme Cold Air Force, seeing the Crimson Storm slay the level 6 beast with one strike, was instantly overjoyed. Its shield was being bitten by a monster. The claw nearly smashed its mechanical arm with a single blow. Here they come. The remaining Horizon Warriors felt their confidence surge. Even without the plasma cannon, they could still smash these monsters. Ahem, the Crimson Storm is responsible for the smashing, while they handle the rest. Keep the monsters at bay, let me handle it. Fong Jing also rushed out quickly. After witnessing the sharpness of the sword, he no longer needed any plasma propulsion. He directly launched a horizontal slash. At the same time, Fong Jing shouted angrily, "Drop your shields and jump away." The Extreme Cold Air Force, realizing the sword's sharpness, didn't hesitate. They let go and swiftly retreated. If they didn't dodge, both the monster and the mech would be sliced in half. In an instant, the sword's edge struck. A flash of light passed, and the monster along with the shield it was biting was sliced in half. This light and effortless sweep was unstoppable due to the sword's sharpness. Only 3 left. Fong Jing's worries turned into excitement. Yes, this is the thrilling feeling of using cold weapons against monsters. He felt it. Monsters, take this sword. I'll make you run 49 meters first. Monster, is that even a sword? Whose sword is like that? Not to mention slicing. They seriously doubted that if the sword's tip touched the ground, it could pierce through the earth. Fong Jing replied, no, it won't pierce through because of the sword structure. Roar. Retreat, run. The Chive Beast, which had been emitting electromagnetic pulses, wasn't lacking in intelligence. Seeing Fong Jing take down a beast with one sword, it knew the opponent's weapon was definitely overpowered, and let out a low growl, vibrating the sound waves in the water. It led the charge to flee. It wants to escape. Fong Jing roared, stop them. Almost instantly, the positions of both offense and defense switched. The Horizon Warriors, prepared to pursue, suddenly halted. Staring at the Chive Beast that was quickly escaping, he suddenly realized something. He ominously raised his right hand, wielding a plasma cannon, and fired 2 shots at the fleeing monster. The plasma ball shot out, and the creature felt a chill in its back. Boom. In an instant, it collapsed to the ground. With a sinister grin, the pilot of the Horizon Warrior put away the overheated cannon and said with a chuckle, run? You have a magnetic shield in front, but not behind. Can you really escape? The monster was indeed a monster, lacking intelligence and only caring about its front without considering its back. Because of this action, the battlefield momentarily froze. The 2 monsters that were planning to respond to the call of their companion and flee suddenly froze as well. That's right. It seemed there was no option to run in their settings. Run? Not a chance. Chapter 226. Return at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. In the cockpit of the Crimson Storm, Fong Jing was also surprised, his mouth agape. He looked at the monster's back, which had been severely damaged, and suddenly realized something. Then, looking at the remaining 2 monsters, his eyes were filled with encouragement. Run, we welcome you to run. As he said this, he slightly shifted his stance to retrieve the open ion cannon that he had set down. Wow, this is amazing. In the setting of the Pioneer race, these monsters were probably like pawns that couldn't retreat after crossing the river. They could only charge forward. On the opposite side, the 2 monsters were furious, snorting and glaring. What to do? Well, they could only struggle desperately. With a roar, the 2 monsters completely went mad. If they were to die, they would at least take someone down with them. However, how could Fong Jing let them have their way? The Horizon Warrior took a defensive stance, while others restricted their movements. Stay safe and be cautious of their desperate attacks. Yes, at this moment, not only Fong Jing, but everyone in the team was extremely excited. If they added these 2, they would have killed a total of 18 monsters. This achievement was enough to last for most of the year. Bang the shields, and reduce their movement range. 10 mechs held shields and struck their shields with blunt instruments, surrounding these monsters and compressing their activity range to the extreme. The 2 monsters kept retreating. Finally, they could no longer hold back. With a furious roar, their massive bodies charged fiercely, with their heads held high and sharp horns. They were proud at that moment. However, no matter how proud the beast tribe was, they could not escape the punishment of the terrifying upright ape. Just as they charged, Fong Jing rushed in from the side, slamming into them with a shoulder charge while simultaneously raising his sword to stab. The sharp blade pierced the monster, chilling it to the core. But that wasn't the end. The plasma jets behind him erupted, and the terrifying thrust pushed the 2 charging monsters together. The 2 monsters, along with the Crimson Storm, crashed fiercely against the shield of the Horizon Warrior. Oh no. Seeing this situation, the pilot of the Horizon Warrior turned pale. Without hesitation, he held the shield with both hands and cranked up the plasma jets to maximum. If it doesn't go to the maximum, he might get thrown away. Boom. The monster was violently pushed by the Crimson Storm and crashed against the shield. The titanium alloy shield instantly had a massive dent. However, fortunately, the Horizon Warrior managed to withstand it. Roar. But the monster caught in the middle was in trouble, being slammed by 2 mechas firing ion jets. It was suffering immensely. Damn, do you think I'm a collider? With a roar, it tried to resist, but it was over. Fong Jing shouted angrily, drew his long sword with a swift motion, and raised it high. Like a hammer, the long sword plunged directly into the head of the last monster. The monster's head split open, dying on the spot. First a crispy crunch, then a mind-blowing impact. Good. This monster was intact, and didn't he bleed much. Take it and retreat. Fong Jing stepped back and glanced at the monster that was pierced through, revealing a satisfied look in his eyes. Then, he slowly turned around, his gaze fixed on the distant gap. So you're the vanguard, daring to trap us like this. Just wait for your end. The coalition forces are about to enter the battlefield. Outside, the situation at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean was little known to them. Media from all over the world gathered by the seaside. Elder Wu and Li Chungbing stood far away with the military, quietly waiting. At this moment, all channels around the world were broadcasting the scene here live. The 12 golden mechas were once again charging at the gap after 7 years. Could they succeed this time? Can the fate of the Earth be changed? Will the monster war come to an end? Now, it's not just the countries along the Pacific that are closely watching. Other nations that have suffered from monster attacks are even more anxious, watching the live broadcast on TV amidst the shattered dome. Do you think they will succeed? Chuck asked his father, while he chuckled lightly. I don't think so. This is their first mission. That's a 6th level mecha. Hake remained cautious, stating that every upgrade of the mecha greatly enhances combat capability. I believe the pilot is the key. Even the best mecha is useless in the hands of a poor pilot. Chuck shook his head. Then you guessed wrong. At that moment, Steck walked out from outside. He looked relaxed, but there was a hint of tension in his eyes. Marshall, what do you mean? Chuck looked at Steck with suspicion. Steck smiled faintly, turning to Chuck, and explained, I consulted the ambassador of a certain nation to the United Nations. The 6th-generation mecha is operated by a single pilot and equipped with an intelligence system for assistance, with a superneural signal transmission system. Operating them, you won't even feel a delay. Saying this, he felt a bit excited. He really hoped this mission would succeed, and if it failed, he would have to find a way to protect these mechas. Treasure indeed. Hearing Steck's introduction, the pilots in the shattered dome were shocked. After 11 years of war, the pilots were always 2 people. Now, the technology has actually broken through. Wait, you all look at the TV, there's movement on the sea. At that moment, amidst the crowd, a technician suddenly pointed at the television and shouted excitedly. Instantly, all eyes turned to the screen. The image showed a calm sea that suddenly began to ripple. Then, something broke through the surface of the water. The seawater was displaced, and under the shimmering sunlight, a crimson shell was enveloped in a golden halo. A towering mech took steady strides, advancing powerfully toward the sandy beach. With each step, a low rumble echoed, causing slight tremors in the ground. It wasn't just a minor tremor. When the other mechs surfaced, 12 of them caused the waves on the beach to surge violently. All 12, without exception. Had they succeeded? The mechs bore torn wounds, indicating they had definitely encountered monsters. Wait, look at the hand of the crimson mech. That is. The mech slowly rose from the continental shelf, revealing itself from head to chest to hand. By the time it reached its knees, the crowd on the beach finally realized something. The handsome mech, shining brilliantly under the sunlight, was dragging a massive and ferocious monster. This creature was extraordinarily large, and a reporter specializing in monster news had their pupils suddenly constrict. This monster was visually estimated to exceed a level 5 monster. Oh my, this is a level 6 monster. As the name of the level 6 monster was announced, the entire beach fell into silence. Everyone gazed at the mech towering like a mountain before them, their eyes filled with admiration. A quick-thinking reporter immediately captured this shocking moment on camera. The 12 mechs, like pillars of heaven, slowly emerged from the sea. The level 6 monster had been completely conquered and killed. Even the ocean seemed to cheer, applauding the courage of humanity. On the high platform, the smile on Old Wu's face could not be suppressed. Just moments ago, a guard had come to report. Colonel Fong Jing had communicated that the information regarding the spatial gate had been fully collected. The spatial gate could be opened at any time. As long as Old Wu approved, the army that had long been prepared could immediately cross borders and charge toward the breach. Battle. Chapter 227. The Spatial Gate. The Drums of War. Broken Dome. As everyone watched the shocking scene on television, they fell silent. Steak chuckled lightly. He felt no disappointment or despair, only joy. The cause he had fought for was finally not forgotten. Someone would take their place and continue the struggle against these monsters to the end. That was a level 6 monster. Chuck was equally stunned. Such a massive size, along with its limbs and the sturdy shield-like armor on its chest. If this thing came ashore, the consequences would be unimaginable. Haha, we might just end up unemployed. Hike laughed easily. If he were unemployed, he could finally go home, fish by the lake, and walk the dog. Oh, and he could also teach his son a lesson. Not just the shattered dome here. But anyone who has seen those shocking images in the news must think that these 12 mechas, or the mechas produced in the future, can protect humanity in the Pacific and shield them from monster attacks. However, that wasn't what Mr. Wu on stage was thinking. What filled his mind was the urgent need to bring the Allied forces over. These mechas are truly expensive. It's not that the Eastern power lacks money, but there are just too many places to spend it. He needed to find a strong backer that would make things easier. After all, relying on his parallel world self isn't that strange. So, an excited Mr. Wu, without even holding a press conference, dismissed the crowd and directly headed to the southwestern region with Colonel Fong Jing. Colonel Fong, how large can the space portal open? How will we accommodate you? And when should we choose to attack? Mr. Wu kept asking along the way. To this, Fong Jing only smiled slightly. Mr. Wu, once the space portal opens, you'll understand. It's hard to explain in words. Once the portal is open, you will naturally comprehend. The things you're worried about will be trivial. All right. We'll rely on you next. Mr. Wu chuckled nonstop. When fighting the Pioneer clan, logistics are necessary, right? The Allied forces from the parallel world cannot transport everything through the space portal, can they? We can serve you. As long as we acquire a bit of technology, we can take off right here. Not only will the crisis be resolved, but our technology will leap forward. No matter how you look at it, it's a win. In fact, judging by Fong Jing's attitude and the documents provided by the other side, they don't mind cooperating. This cooperation isn't just cooperation. It's essentially a version of poverty alleviation in the parallel universe. They allow sending people to study at the Jiuzhou United University, even sharing the necessary technology based on circumstances. Mr. Wu thought about these possibilities, which could be realized once the space portal opened, and couldn't help but feel excited. This is getting technology for free. Just the materials and technology for that sword from the Red Storm. As long as we grasp it, we can become invincible on Earth. It's that simple. However, have we figured out what identity we should adopt for a large-scale strike? Fong Jing suddenly thought of this. This question made Mr. Wu silent for a second, just 1 second, before he quickly confirmed, let us use your real identities. The Pioneer clan can invade us through a wormhole at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Having a parallel universe help us is just a shock. There's no need to hide it all. Mr. Wu's meaning was clear. Why conceal anything? There's no need for that in this world. Just bring everything out and hit the Pioneer clan hard. Anyway, what can other countries do once they find out? Can they close the space portal? Don't be ridiculous. If they can't manage the wormholes in their own universe, how can they close cross-universe portals? Fang Jing raised an eyebrow, surprised by Mr. Wu's choice. And he was also curious to respond. That's fine. I'm very curious about what will happen then. Perhaps, by that time, countries around the world will be shocked. After all, a parallel universe has suddenly emerged, and it's quite formidable. For this nation, it's a chance to drive away the wolves and embrace new opportunities. For other nations, it means driving away the wolves only to face tigers and leopards. The name itself suggests that the faction where Fang Jing resides is quite pure in composition. After all, this is the coalition from the parallel universe. Surrounded by 3 massive peaks, a small basin has formed, with all the trees already cut down. The ground has been compacted and reinforced with concrete. Above, there is a steel dome with enhanced structure, which can open to allow equipment to exit without hindrance. This location is very close to the heavy artillery base, chosen personally by the Elder Wu to prevent the position of the spatial gate. So how about this space? It's quite large, right? The Elder Wu cheerfully introduced it to Fang Jing, even gesturing with his hands. Even if you bring a spaceship the size of an aircraft carrier, it can fit here completely. It is indeed spacious. Fang Jing looked at the vast area and nodded with a hint of satisfaction. Well, just relatively satisfied. After all, the engineering clan also needs to participate in the battle. What does it mean to only accommodate a few aircraft carriers? He knows that the world of Jojo is preparing something big for this occasion. By then, this place will be completely filled. So, once the spatial gate opens, they will have to rely on them to expand the area here. The mountains will be flattened for you. Large machinery can pass through the spatial gate. It's that grand. Ha ha ha. That is good. Let us land quickly. The Elder Wu noticed Fang Jing's expression and knew that this space would definitely not be enough. The more he guessed this, the more he couldn't help but laugh. The helicopter slowly descended onto the flat ground, and the guards hurried over to open the cabin door. A few people jumped out of the plane, and the Elder Wu pointed to the edge of the site while walking and said, "It's right there. We planned the spatial gate according to the data you provided. All right, I'll head back now. Please wait a moment." Fang Jing confirmed the location, stood firm, and saluted the Elder Wu and Li Qingbing. The next moment, with a whoosh, he vanished from the spot. After Fang Jing left, the Elder Wu stared at the place where he had disappeared, lost in thought, and after a long while, he sighed. No matter how many times I see it, I am still amazed. Indeed, Elder Wu, traversing parallel universes is truly extraordinary. Li Qingbing nodded in agreement. This scene, no matter how many times one witnesses it, always evokes awe. Anyway, let's not talk about this. Have the people from the military academy arrived? The Elder Wu waved his hand, shifting the topic with anticipation. They have all arrived. Li Qingbing chuckled softly and pointed to the distance. Over there, among the flat ground, there was a group of middle-aged and elderly individuals with bright appearances. They seemed to be uninterested in this side, but their occasional glances revealed otherwise. Has the sequence of events been communicated to them? The Elder Wu recognized an old acquaintance, nodded, and asked softly. They have already been informed that if I hadn't instructed the guards to hold them back, they would have rushed over as soon as Fang Jing got off the plane. Li Qingbing shook his head and smiled, saying, "Old Wu, you should have seen their eyes. They were practically glowing with excitement." He chuckled, who wouldn't be, remembering his own lapse. Old Wu shook his head and earnestly advised, "When the people from the other side arrive, let them be sharp. They can take the opportunity to seek advice while helping out, got it?" He understood. I'll make sure to remind them. Li Qingbing immediately displayed a knowing expression and waved to the distant group. The scientists, who had all turned their heads away, suddenly bolted toward them. A horde of elderly individuals with eager eyes rushing over. Chapter 228. It seems like trouble has arisen. In this universe, beneath the Shishan base, the underground space was quite remarkable. At present, the entire mountain had been hollowed out by heavy machinery, creating an absurdly large hidden space. In the center of a massive airtight transfer area, there stood a very large spatial gate. This gate had been expanded using spatial distortion devices. Recently, both this universe and the neighboring world had gained a clearer understanding of the spatial gate. They could only use the distortion devices to enlarge or reduce the gate, with the maximum enlargement limit yet to be determined, while the minimum reduction limit was set at a diameter of 2 meters. As for the authority to close it, that was certainly not available. In the underground transfer area, aside from the enormous spatial gate, there were other noteworthy features. Surrounding the gate was a complete circle of warships. These were not ordinary spacecraft, but genuine military vessels. With pointed bows, elongated hulls, and a rugged appearance, they were intricately crafted inside to an astonishing degree. This type of warship combined the robust design of heavy industry with the refined aesthetics of high technology. Not only that, beside the warships, human crew members clad in biological exoskeletons and wearing electronic holographic combat helmets were busily conducting checks. Indeed, there was also biotechnology aboard these vessels. Additionally, next to these ships, familiar C-type model spacecraft could be seen, where Engineer Holos was leading a large group of his kind, verifying combat plans with human combat personnel under a holographic projection. This scene of humans and the engineer fleet together was truly spectacular and awe-inspiring. Just as the transfer area was bustling with activity, Fang Jing's figure suddenly appeared in the designated spot. The moment he materialized, he immediately fell into a familiar faint, tilting his head and collapsing to one side. Fortunately, the expert team was well acquainted with this situation. Zhou Yuan, who had been waiting nearby, quickly caught Fang Jing and adeptly placed him on the medical examination table. The results showed that everything was normal. Zhao, Fang Jing is back, and his health is fine, Zhou Yuan reported through the communication system after checking the results. I've received the data and message on my end. Take him to the rest cabin. Zhao Guangyao smirked. Now that he is back, the spatial gate can be opened soon. He glanced at the 20 warships stationed in the transit zone, feeling a surge of pride. With 15 warships, each 541 meters long and 91 meters wide. Equipped with 4 small controllable nuclear fusion engines, 2 active and 2 standby, the power was quite adequate. Although this spacecraft couldn't exceed light speed. Wasn't there someone ahead to take the lead? Zhu Lao muttered to himself, looking over the plans with a light chuckle. This time, the engineer faction had voluntarily taken the lead in resisting the invasion of the pioneers into the parallel world, with the engineer faction a veteran interstellar civilization. As the main force, they just needed to provide support and subtly disturb the enemy. A biological civilization facing another biological civilization promised to be a good show. However, Zhu Lao's mechanical body turned its electronic eyes slightly, glancing at Zhao Guangyao, and softly reminded him, we must not let our guard down against the engineer faction. The combat personnel are limited to the first batch of captives, including Halaw. There should be divisions and balances even among captives. Otherwise, if the enemy turned against them, it would be troublesome. Zhu Lao felt reassured that everything was in order. Zhao Guangyao nodded steadily. He had already adopted some of Zhu Lao's working style. Well, that's good, Zhu Lao said lightly. The fleet before them, along with its secret weapons, was their greatest reliance. In the deep sea of the Pacific Rim, the outpost base of the pioneers, Halaw, who had been waiting anxiously for the level 6 monster to return, was completely flustered. Why hadn't he come back yet? Its pincers shook. If it were human, it would be sweating profusely by now. It seemed to have gotten into trouble. Quickly, access the main brain data. Realizing that it might have messed up, Halaw immediately connected to the main brain to investigate the memories of the released level 6 monster. The memories of the monster would be transmitted to the main brain in real time through telepathy. Halaw trembled its pincers, carefully reading the memories. As a result, it immediately saw the scene of the level 6 monster being decapitated. It was dead. The level 6 monster that it had released for large-scale deployment by the pioneers was easily killed. It was a massacre. How could this happen? Something was wrong. Something was wrong. I need to report immediately. Halaw couldn't think about anything else. Human civilization had changed, and they needed to respond immediately. However, what puzzled it the most was what had happened on Earth. Why had their combat power suddenly increased so much? After 11 Earth years of probing, they had completely understood the technological level of the biological beings on this planet. The mechanical technology was still at the level of planetary civilizations, quite weak. If it weren't for the intention to infect this planet and its beings to propagate the pioneer race, they could have destroyed this mere human civilization easily on the day the wormhole opened. The pioneers were at the pinnacle of biological civilization and once faced the dilemma of genes unable to propagate. Fortunately, they ultimately found a clever solution. The method they chose was genetic preservation. Indeed, the pioneering race, constrained by the limitations of their own civilization's understanding, could only take risks due to the lack of comparable biological civilizations for reference. They resorted to a method of colonizing the creatures of different planets to ensure the survival of their genes. You could think of it as a form of parasitism, as their original genes were no longer capable of reproduction. Thus, they directly packaged their genes, using a substance to contaminate the organisms on other planets, transforming both the planetary and biological environments to allow their genes to parasitize new species. In this way, through the reproduction of the local organisms, their genes could also be preserved. In the process, the native creatures naturally evolved into pioneers. Once they had exhausted the genetic potential of the colonized organisms, the pioneering race would open a new wormhole and begin the next colonization, with humanity being their newly selected target. As for the lobster-like body, it belonged to the previous target. Halawa broke out in a cold sweat as he sensed something was amiss. The crimson mech from the memory of the 6th level creature and the sword held by the opponent were very troubling. The technology condensed on that sword had already surpassed several eras of humanity on this planet. There was no way humanity could possess such technology. Even if they stumbled upon the remnants of a higher civilization, with their smelting techniques, they would only ruin the material. Moreover, the internal atomic structure of such materials was on the brink of collapse. Even for them, it would be extremely difficult to replicate. After all, since the pioneers began using wormholes for their activities, much technology had been lost. They had already stopped constructing spaceships. Why build a spaceship? They had become a parasitic civilization, changing their habitat every few thousand years, crossing thousands of light years, and targeting weak civilizations. Spaceships were completely useless, just a burden. In short, the pioneering race had dominated the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies for too long, even longer than the engineers. Those who should have devolved had already done so, resembling the engineers in every way. This was also why the engineer race surrendered in excitement upon hearing their news. The issue of genetic reproduction for biological civilizations became a significant hurdle in the later stages. If they couldn't overcome it, the entire race would face decline or even extinction. Chapter 229. We are not fools. This sword is a big problem. Hulaa keenly recognized that there was a major issue with the memory retrieved from the 6th level beast. Particularly that sword, which was very suspicious. The materials used for the 6th level creature's skeleton and magnetic shield were highly targeted, stemming from combat trials 11 years ago with humanity. According to the pioneers' expectations, humanity would not be easily annihilated. However, that sword was clearly over the top. Humanity shouldn't even be able to forge a single milligram of such material. Reporting this information would make up for the loss. Hulaa felt much more at ease. Although it had prematurely exposed and lost a 6th level creature, it at least obtained a very important piece of information. The situation has changed for the colonized humans. Particularly, in terms of technology. The herding plans of the pioneers must adapt, or else the continuation of their genetic line will face issues. After all, they have already spent too much time on this front. With this in mind, Hulaa immediately reported to the leader of the tribe through the main brain. The elder leader of the tribe had been transformed back into genes and stored in the rear, usually in a dormant state. However, once information pointed towards it, it would be stimulated to awaken. How does a string of genes awaken, activate, and think like a human? It's quite understandable. Upon receiving Hulaa's information, the biological computer main brain at the rear immediately accessed the leader's genes, just like a quantum computer accessing the data of digital life. The leader of the pioneers was completely revived on the biological computer. Herdsman Hulaa discovered abnormal technological nodes in the herded planetary civilization. A significant generational leap? A biological computer, resembling a fleshy ball composed of a nervous system and electrical signals, was pulsating like a heart. Its surface was covered with densely packed folds, pink in color, resembling a brain. Suddenly, blue light flashed rapidly across these folds, the color akin to the blood of a monster. The leader of the pioneers was deep in thought. It had already reviewed the memories sent back by Hulaa. That sword, humans definitely cannot create it at this stage. The probability is 9,999 that human civilization received support from other civilizations. The minuscule possibility is that the other side experienced a technological explosion within 11 years. The leader instantly reached a conclusion. In the 11 years of war, monsters have devoured countless humans through the plunder of memories. They have gained an extremely deep understanding of human civilization. To achieve such a level of explosion within 10 years, unless humans directly stumbled upon production equipment from other civilizations. And that equipment just happened to align with human technological understanding. But how is that possible? What are the odds of such a lucky occurrence? Therefore, there must be a higher level civilization secretly supporting the other side. The situation has changed. The leader's attitude turned cold, and the entire biological computer began to shake violently. It was enraged. This was the herding target the pioneers had set their sights on. How glorious it is for the pioneering tribe to traverse the galaxy and the Andromeda Galaxy. Yet, mere insignificant beings dared to support humans, seeking death. With this thought, the leader immediately issued an order. The herding plan has changed. Notify the Elder Council and prepare for a strong offensive. Dig out the supporters behind humans and see which of our old friends it is. There are not many civilizations daring to confront the pioneering tribe. At least, in the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies, most have already perished. The leader wants to see who has the audacity to provoke them. In the world around the Pacific, countries are anxiously awaiting reports from the Eastern Power. Several days have passed since the completion of the breach mission, yet there has been no confirmation of success, which has left them feeling anxious. Why is there still no certainty about the outcome? The tone of Chuck, referring to the shattered dome, reflected some impatience. How can the efficiency be so low when it's just about confirming a piece of news? Perhaps they are still studying the corpse of the level 6 monster. A flash of fear crossed Hake's eyes. A level 6 monster, information that Marshal Stake had only learned from a diplomat, was already terrifying. Our raiders couldn't even break through the opponent's frontal defense. If all future encounters are with such monsters, the consequences are unimaginable. He could already picture it in his mind. Their pride, the mechas, being torn to shreds by level 6 monsters. This might be an isolated case, but it warrants our vigilance. Stake was also feeling extremely unsettled. It seemed that the drastic changes in the monsters exceeded his original expectations. What exactly happened during this breach? Just as the team was discussing in the command room, the monster detector they had installed suddenly emitted intense fluctuations. Beep, beep, beep. The shrill alarm immediately rang out. The observers in the meeting turned around in a hurry. General Stake, it's an emergency. The breach is once again transmitting energy fluctuations from the monster. Report the energy level. At this moment, the breach sent out energy fluctuations, and this news undoubtedly responded to everyone. The opponent's mission to storm the breach should have failed. Stake remained calm in the face of danger, his voice steady. They were professionals when it came to dealing with monsters. Energy levels are being detected. The observer quickly accessed the detector, but upon seeing the data, his hand trembled, his pupils constricted, and his lips quivered as he said, the energy level results indicate an unprecedented level. This is a level 6 monster. What? Both Stake and Hake, who had initially been quite confident, were momentarily stunned. In disbelief, they immediately confirmed. A level 6 monster? Are you sure? General, we can confirm that the energy level of this monster is unprecedented. The observer sitting in front of the computer, his lips dry, felt a surge of despair in his eyes. He pointed at the densely packed dots on the screen and suddenly burst into a wretched laugh. It's over. We're finished. General, it's not just one level 6 monster. There are thousands that have already broken through the breach, and the number is still increasing. We're done for. Thousands. Upon receiving this information, not only the observer, but also Marshal Stake was left frozen in place. He had seen many scenes before. After all, he was once a pilot of a generation of mechas. However, now, seeing the countless red dots surging out from the breach, Stake felt despair as blood began to pour from his nose. He truly had never seen such a scene. Even with 1,000 level 5 monsters, they had no way to cope, let alone these were level 6 monsters. Can humanity withstand this? It seems that the situation has become dire. With monstrous invasions leaving devastation on Earth, how can we save ourselves? Who will come to our aid? Relying on just a few mechs that have broken through the dome, along with a dozen from a certain Eastern nation? It's going to be very difficult. It's over, completely over. We have failed. Chapter 230. What about the distant seas? Marshal Stake had never felt such despair before. Even when there were discussions to abolish the Hunter program, he had never felt this hopeless. The screen was filled with countless red dots, each representing a level 6 monster, making one's scalp tingle. The suffocating fear and despair enveloped the entire broken dome in an instant. How could this be possible? Marshal Stake murmured unconsciously. He had thought that with the support from the Eastern nation, the subsequent defenses would be stable. Completely stable. But now, turning around to face this? Over 1,000 of them. Bang! Chuck slammed his fist on the table, standing up with red eyes as he looked at Stake, resolutely saying, General, no matter what, let us set out. Even if we die, we will die fighting against these monsters. Let them see our strength. That's right. Hike also rarely agreed with his son's words. His son, although he behaved like a ruffian, was commendable for his loyalty. They would die fighting against the monsters. Die in the cockpit of the Hunter mechs. All right. Stake took out a tissue to wipe the blood from his nose. Then continued. Get me in touch with the embassy of the Eastern nation. Let us see what we need to do. This crisis is unprecedented. However, since the broken dome is essentially under someone else's roof, we need to give a heads up before we act. The call was connected. Beep, beep, beep. Broken dome, Marshal Stake? A familiar voice of Chun Jiming sounded in the command room of the broken dome. The voice was calm and gentle, providing an inexplicable sense of reassurance. Chun, do you know about the breach? Stake, no longer composed, spoke with anxiety and despair. Yes, I know. Chun Jiming confirmed. Chun, no matter what, even in failure, we must fight to the end. What do we need to do? Stake politely inquired. The situation was dire, having reached a point of inevitable defeat. He knew that their actions might be futile, but they could not do nothing. When the Hunter program was established, he had fought for so many years for one purpose, to protect humanity and completely resolve the breach. He had expected Chun Jiming to give them tasks with a wry smile, to struggle together in their final effort. For this, Stake was prepared, with the medicine ready in his mouth. However, Chen's response completely caught him off guard. Just listen, Chun Jiming spoke with a mysterious confidence. His tone strong and assured. The commander need not worry. This is a possible outcome we anticipated before launching our attack. As for the mission, we asked the individuals from Shattered Dome and the 12 Hunter mechas from our Eastern nation to clean up the possible escaping monsters. Stake was taken aback. They had anticipated this situation. Now, the remaining mechas on Earth would be used to deal with the potential escapees. But who would handle the thousands of monsters? Missiles? Nuclear weapons? Stake was confused, and so was everyone from Shattered Dome. What is happening? Chen, are you sure? Stake swallowed hard, raising his eyebrows sharply. We just need to clear the escaping monsters? That's right, don't worry, just wait and see. Chun Jiming replied with a smirk. You'll see for yourselves soon enough. I hope you won't be shocked. In the Pacific, the primary fleet was advancing slowly, conducting simulated strike exercises. X-Key sat in the command room of the aircraft carrier, his expression serious. In front of him, the intelligence officer was anxiously reporting. According to multinational probes in the Pacific, thousands of monsters rated above level 5 have suddenly appeared. Possibly level 6. Thousands. Hearing this number, X-Key's face turned pale. FXXK, how do we deal with that? The Pentagon reported that we must intercept the advancing monsters, with the 3rd and 2nd fleets on their way to assist. How long until they reach combat position? X-Key's serious expression did not change upon hearing about the 2 fleets' assistance. 3 fleets. If the number of advancing monsters exceeded 200, they wouldn't be able to stop them. It will take at least a month for the 3rd and 2nd fleets to arrive, the intelligence officer said, opening his mouth helplessly. A month? X-Key turned back in disbelief. A month? They would have been crushed by the monsters long before then. The breach was located in the eastern part of the Pacific. It would take a month for support to arrive, but the monsters could reach their position in just 1 to 2 weeks. How could they defend against that? X-Key stood up, fists clenched, ready to strike. However, remembering he was at the command post, he gritted his teeth and slammed his fist against the back of the chair. Captain, what should we do? The intelligence officer asked desperately. In the entire Pacific, this position was occupied solely by their fleet. What to do? X-Key's chest heaved, fists clenched, and after a long pause, he said with red eyes, according to the Pentagon's orders, we will fight to block them. They couldn't possibly just let their fleet evade. Hundreds of level 6 monsters landing on the coast would lead to unimaginable consequences. They could only fight desperately to stop them. Captain X. The intelligence officer provided detailed information that a group of over 100 monsters was diverting eastward through the gap, expected to enter our range in about a week. Since retreat is not an option, the intelligence officer immediately began analyzing the current situation. Get the crew fired up. Captain X gritted his teeth and ordered. Switch to live ammunition, form battle formations, and prepare for the monster assault. Yes. The news of thousands of monsters emerging from the gap sent chills through the countries surrounding the ocean. Everyone was quietly mobilizing troops and organizing defenses outside their borders. A strange atmosphere hung over the entire human world, although no one reported the actual situation by the end. Even ordinary people who rarely followed the news could feel the oppressive air. A silent fear gripped their hearts. What exactly is happening? Meanwhile, on the ocean, fleets from various countries suddenly noticed, wait, why has the aircraft carrier fleet from the eastern nation moved close to shore? Are you abandoning the deep-sea defense against the monsters? Chapter 231. A cloud of blood mist on the Pacific Ocean. Countries were dispatching their fleets to establish defensive positions just beyond the near shore. This was a logical approach. After all, once dozens or hundreds of monsters reached the near shore, it would be too late to defend. However, one nation was doing the exact opposite. In the command center of the Pacific Defense Coalition, representatives were baffled. What is the eastern nation doing? They rejected our communication request. Satellite imagery revealed their fleet was stationed close to shore, beyond the East China Sea and Yellow Sea, with no defenses in place. How do they plan to defend if they're not securing the deep sea? It's unclear. Have they lost their minds? Is this a surrender? Representatives from the Pacific nations, and even from around the world, were utterly confused. What is going on? They won't answer the phone, and their fleet isn't moving away. Are they giving up resistance and preparing for the monsters to land near shore? As the second largest naval force in the world, this is leaving others feeling helpless. Regardless, given the current situation at the gap, we must immediately fortify our defenses. Captain X rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. How do we defend against this? Hundreds of monsters are surging toward us. A small nation's fleet near Oceania sent out desperate pleas. Thousands of monsters were flowing through the gap. But the diversion seemed chaotic and sudden. This tiny nation was facing 100 monsters. With only 3 destroyers, how could they defend against that? We request assistance from the coalition fleets. The frantic calls for help drowned the entire communication channel. Captain X opened his mouth, swallowed hard, and pretended to be buffering. Then, he kicked the communication line away. Due to network issues, the connection was lost. Sigh. It's better not to have this meeting at all. Rubbing his head, X understood that the number of monsters this time had completely exceeded the capacity of various countries. All nations were calling for help. Help from whom? Of course. It was from a certain country. But if you're asking me for help, who the heck do I turn to for help? A fleet facing hundreds of monsters. I feel just as helpless. This so-called Pacific Defense Joint Command Center. I'm never going back. X waved his hand. As they say in a certain country, everyone is now like a clay Buddha crossing a river, unable to protect themselves. Better to save myself first. So how do we refuse? The intelligence officer couldn't think of a reason to decline for a moment. Just say we were attacked by monsters, and the electromagnetic pulse temporarily disabled our communication systems. X waved his hand. He remembered that the report from a certain major country mentioned that the monsters already had the capability of electromagnetic pulse. This is indeed a good excuse. However, it also brought him even more despair. Damn it. It would have been better not to know. Dying in confusion would be easier. Dying clearly like this is so damn frustrating. Time slowly passed amidst the anxious waiting of the nations. A week passed. In the Pacific, the fleet finally faced their fear as the group of monsters had entered their long-range detection range. Without unmanned reconnaissance boats, the brave souls of the Suicide Squad, dragging sonar, had already rushed toward the monsters in small boats. On the boat, Hills, Moby, Thomas, and Eclair braced themselves against the crashing waves. The 4 remained silent, their eyes filled only with determination and resolve. Their mission was to determine the exact number of monsters for the fleet. Moby, keep a close watch on the sonar. Thomas, keep your hand on the communicator, and make sure to send the message before you die. Eclair, have we reached the position? Captain Hills asked confidently, standing at the back of the boat, steering straight toward the mission target. We have 3 nautical miles left before we collide with them. Eclair's voice was serious. Ha ha ha, guys, are you scared? Hills asked passionately, enjoying the sea breeze. Of course not. I'll make sure the information reaches the fleet before I die. FXX gay, of course. I'm scared. I'm afraid I'll count wrong. Then make sure to count properly. After a few light-hearted exchanges, Eclair suddenly said, attention. We have reached the detection position. Prepare the sonar. Beep, 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 beep. Moby, observing the sonar equipment, was taken aback by the displayed number. FXX gay, Thomas. There are 312 monsters heading toward our east coast. Damn, 312. Thomas trembled slightly. That is a whole 100 more than expected. At the same time, he quickly transmitted the information. Upon receiving the detection report from the Suicide Squad, the entire defense fleet was stunned. 100 of them have already brought despair. And now there are 300 more. And they are advancing. How are we supposed to fight this? Moreover, the sonar image shows that they are moving very scattered. They have even formed formations. Beep, 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 the signal from the lost team members. In the communications room, the intelligence officer sighed. We can't let these young men sacrifice in vain. X tightened his jaw and immediately roared an order. Combat formation, prepare to attack. Missiles ready, launch preparations underway. No matter what, fire them out immediately. X knew that these missiles had to be fired at this moment. Otherwise, there would be no hope left. Roar. In the distance, the monsters that sensed the fleet's presence, a level 6 monster, burst out of the sea, its flower-like structure on top glowing blue as it gathered energy. Finally, at a certain moment, the blue light flashed at high speed and exploded violently. Rings of electromagnetic pulses rapidly expanded from the monster's center. The blue shockwave surged through. All human electronic devices caught in the blast, including circuits and chips, were completely destroyed. The First Fleet seemed to have repeated the history of this universe. With one electromagnetic pulse, the entire fleet was rendered useless. However, fortunately, the missiles were launched. Yes, they were launched, but they veered off wildly, plunging into the vast Pacific Ocean, creating hundreds of large splashes without even touching a hair on the monster. The monsters continuing their advance underwater all looked up. What is that noise? In the fleet command room, looking at the completely blacked out radar and command systems, X lowered his head in despair. Time was too tight. Although they knew the monsters could produce electromagnetic pulses, there was simply no time to install protective equipment. We lost. We have failed. Roar. Boom. Boom. In the distance, the monster horde was cheering, roaring, and howling. They menacingly swam toward the now completely disabled fleet, ready to enjoy the fruits of victory. On the fleet, the crew members gathered on the deck, and X also came to the deck. Roar. Not far away, a gigantic monster recklessly extended its massive body from the sea, letting out a furious roar. The piercing roar silenced the crew, filling them with anger. The monster, emerging with its upper body from the water, slowly approached the fleet under the furious gazes of the crew. Like a small island, the hideous-looking monster gradually neared the enormous aircraft carrier that reflected metallic sheen. What would happen next seemed already destined. The crew was in despair. Some closed their eyes to await death, some raised their rifles, intending to express humanity's unyielding courage, while others stared wide-eyed, calmly facing death. Roar. The monster close to the deck seemed to show a hint of mockery in its eyes. Then, buzzing, a brilliant ray shot from an unknown distance, directly striking its body. Boom. In the astonished gazes of the personnel from the First Fleet, the level 6 monster that had been eyeing them fiercely was blown to a mist of blood from less than 100 meters away. What was that just now? Just as the fleet was at a loss against the approaching monster, a brilliant ray suddenly shot in from the distance, almost instantly turning that level 6 monster into a cloud of blood mist. Such a violent scene left the crew gathered on the deck speechless. What was that? What just happened? What is going on now? Roar. In the distance, seeing their companions suddenly perish, the monsters were enraged. They let out furious roars. With their limited intelligence, they assumed it was the fleet that had attacked. Over 300 monsters roared and charged forward. The surge of the beast horde even stirred up furious waves on the sea. The collective roar of the 300 monsters was deafening. The fleet members, who had just felt excitement moments ago, suddenly felt their hearts chill. Regardless of what that was just now, they were surely done for. At that very moment, a dazzling light suddenly shone in the sky above. What kind of light was that? Pale in color, cold and piercing, it stood out starkly in natural light. Yet, this brilliant light charged boldly into the roaring monster horde. Not only did it rush in, but as it did, the cold light erupted. Any monster that came into contact with that pale light instantly exploded into a mist of blood. The blue blood deepened the color of the sea in an instant. In just a few seconds, all 300 monsters were slaughtered. What was that? The intelligence officer stood on the carrier's command deck, watching the scene unfold, his pupils shaking in disbelief. The 300 monsters that had left them helpless, capable of causing half of the nation's downfall, were all resolved in an instant? What exactly was that pale light? Look over there, in the sky, something in the clouds. The munitions officer, with sharp eyes, pointed at the sky and exclaimed, X. The intelligence officer and everyone nearby who heard the shout immediately looked up at the thick clouds above. The sky was bright with white clouds and sunshine. It seemed like nothing was there, but with careful observation, one could notice something strange. There was a small reflective point at the edge of the clouds. A gust of wind blew past, and what was hidden in the clouds began to reveal itself to everyone's gaze. It was elongated, with a conical top, rugged in form but reflecting light delicately. Notably, beside it was a C-shaped flying object. In the center of the C-type flying object, a pale light suddenly appeared and rushed towards the distance. It turned out to be 2 spacecraft. Where did these ships come from? Seeing the gleaming spacecraft reflecting the sunlight, with their sci-fi shapes and terrifying weapons, the crew of the First Fleet was stunned. Where did these things come from? They helped us eliminate the monsters. Are they on our side? What level of technology does humanity have now? X, look at the emblem on the back of the spacecraft. The intelligence officer had sharp eyes. He rubbed them in disbelief. What did he see? He urgently wanted to confirm with someone, to make sure he wasn't mistaken. What is that? X widened his eyes and focused on what the intelligence officer was pointing at. He saw that at the rear of the 2 massive ships in the sky, there was a uniform paint job with a common insignia. Between 2 black horizontal bars was a rather inconspicuous black pentagram. Moreover, below it, there were highly recognizable square characters. This is the military identification of a major country from the east. As the captain of the fleet, X would never mistake this insignia. After all, they are old rivals. I could recognize their markings at a glance. Ruby, you studied Chinese. What does the text below the insignia say? X asked excitedly, his eyes almost popping out as he inquired of the crew member beside him. Gulp. Ruby swallowed hard, his mind racing as he used his lifelong Chinese studies to decipher the characters. The Special Operations Group of the 5th Space Army of the People's Liberation Army, and Engineers Special Operations Group. As Ruby conveyed the painted text in English, everyone nearby who heard it was stunned into silence. Is that really from the PLA? Is this scientific? Is this reasonable? With these spacecraft and weapons, you could convince me they were aliens. You're telling me these are from a major country in the East? X's jaw dropped in shock. He suddenly began to understand why the recent actions of the major country in the East always seemed so strange. No wonder their navy had retreated to the coastal waters. They hadn't given up on the open sea. They were preparing to completely eliminate the monsters that were about to land. Fuck. X's eyes immediately filled with ecstasy. He suddenly took off his hat, waving his hands and shouting loudly at the spacecraft standing in the sky. Go for it. Give those damned monsters a good beating. Yes. Shove those monsters back through that damned gap. Go for it. After the initial shock, the entire fleet's crew was driven to madness with excitement. There is hope. Humanity is saved. Above the Pacific, silence and shock were the themes of the day. Just as the monsters began to breach the defenses of the various fleets, a pale light suddenly shot out from the sky. Those despair-inducing monsters, whenever illuminated by this pale light, would immediately turn into a mist of blood. No one knows the principle of this pale light. They only know that they have been saved. The hand that reached out for help came from a massive C-shaped spacecraft floating in the sky. The familiar symbols and writings on the ship left the nations around the Pacific in shock. Could it really be something from a certain Eastern nation? Doubt quickly followed. How could a nation from the East possess such technology? They could have swallowed the ship whole. Could this be some aliens pretending to be from the Eastern nation to rescue us? However, subsequent news genuinely confirmed that these things had indeed flown out from the Eastern nation. Surveillance satellites had definitely verified that these conical and C-shaped spacecraft had all emerged from the interior of the Eastern nation. As they crossed multiple cities, they were captured on camera by the residents of that nation. This means these ships truly belong to the Eastern nation. The confirmation of this news left everyone speechless. Wait, brother, we've been fighting monsters for 11 years, and you've just been playing around. With such great resources, why didn't you reveal them earlier? Chapter 233, Invasion of the Pacific Rim World. When Fongjing reappears in the southwest region of the Eastern nation, after the transit station, a massive spatial gate opens. From the pitch-black spherical gate, conical spacecraft slowly emerge. Not just one. The sight of the fleet overshadowed the sun, causing Wu Lao to smile broadly. The anxious feelings caused by the reported thousands of monsters along the coast were immediately calmed. With such a fleet, what could mere monsters do against us? As the fleet traversed the wormhole, 20 giant ships filled the sky above the transit station. The intelligence system on board had already connected to the satellite system around the Pacific Rim. Soon, the fleet commander He Fan received a report from his intelligence officer. The nations around the Pacific were organizing a defensive line to resist the thousands of monsters that had appeared. Therefore, as soon as the fleet had just arrived, they decided to head east immediately. Thus, the war against the pioneer race officially began. Above the breach and the pioneer race's wormhole in the Pacific, 15 spacecraft lined up in a planetary combat formation. The flagship, the Star Domain Node ship, had the commander standing before a holographic map, expressionless, listening intently to the intelligence officer relay information. The total number of scattered monsters was 241, all of which had been eliminated. The biomass energy weapons specially designed by the engineer race were completely unstoppable by the monsters. Upon contact, they turned into a mist of blood. How is the pollution treatment progressing? He Fan's voice was deep and steady. Ship 17 has entered a 100-kilometer orbit and is currently dispersing detoxifiers globally, with a purification level exceeding 40. The intelligence officer pointed to the holographic projection and continued, according to the plan, we are clearing the ocean's interference. The engineer spacecraft has completed the camouflage of the monster gene identifiers and is ready to assault the wormhole. Based on our understanding of the Pacific Rim, all countermeasures and plans had already been considered before the spatial gate opened. Now that we have truly arrived in this world, the choices available for the fleet have greatly increased. Good, let Holos get ready. Next, we will see how they perform. Captain He Fan's eyes were fixed intently on the holographic projection. Below the spacecraft, 2 enormous spheres were slowly descending. These spheres were grayish-white, with menacing vascular structures at their centers, appearing smooth and slick. From a human perspective, these things looked utterly repulsive. In fact, these were the monster gene markers disguised by the engineer race. On the C-class warship, Holos had long been with his eyes closed. He was not waiting, but communicating with his ship. A buzzing sound echoed within the ship's chamber, as if it were cheering and rejoicing. We will fight together and usher in a new beginning for the engineer race. Holos suddenly opened his eyes, picked up a short flute from the pilot's platform, and gently placed the mouthpiece to his lips. A melodious tune resonated in the ship's cockpit. As the music came to an end, a pale blue light in the ship's chamber began to flicker, as if the ship could sense Holos's repressed excitement. Holos, the commander has given the order. We can now charge into the wormhole. On the ship, observing the sudden appearance of the images in the cockpit and the brilliant star map. Supervisor Du Sun couldn't help but feel emotional. Good. Upon receiving the attack order, Holos immediately put down the flute, and the complex biological skeleton on the pilot's platform swiftly enveloped his entire body. Let the disguised markers enter the constant flight zone. All assault ships, check the weapon systems and prepare to charge into the wormhole. Understood. The 5 engineer ships were piloted by the first batch of captives from the engineer race, and there were also human monitors and communicators aboard. They would act as the assault team, directly attacking the outpost of the pioneer race. Above the Pacific Breach, the C-class ship slowly descended. The grayish-white metallic sphere docked precisely in the central area of the C-class ship. The marker's gravity had been anchored, and the entire fleet was prepared for action. Holos seemed to regain the confidence he once had as a destroyer, his eyes gleaming with excitement and fervor. Blackwater, facing a civilization capable of opening wormholes, without any hesitation from this universe or the 9 provinces, was ready to deliver Blackwater into the wormhole. After all, Blackwater was specifically designed for biological assaults. The pioneer race, being a galactic civilization, had surely seen all kinds of formations. They had to come in with the most brutal tactics to catch them off guard. Furthermore, to fund this operation, Elder Deacon of the engineer race directly revealed all the secrets of Heaven Star. This included the sealed energy weapons meant for biological assaults. Yes, those pale lights that could turn monsters into blood mist upon contact. Preparation complete. The 5 ships slowly opened their delivery hatches, revealing a dense array of metallic canisters that sent shivers down one's spine. All right, let's go. Holos immediately notified the entire fleet. The 5 C-class ships, tethered by a gravitational field to the disguised markers, charged straight into the sea. The spaceship, capable of diving, makes perfect sense. At the bottom of the Pacific, across from the breach, lies the outpost of the pioneers. Numerous members of the pioneer race have gathered here. At this moment, they are silent, looking around without a word. Thousands of monsters have been eliminated almost simultaneously. There must be someone backing humanity. The mouthpiece of Helroth writhes, and the voice is undoubtedly decisive. We are already aware of the exposure of the level 6 monsters. This will be a way to make amends. The leader's consciousness comes from the main brain, filled with rage. How dare someone actually stand against them? Seeking death, we immediately formulate a counterattack strategy and awaken all the sealed weapons. Prepare to occupy Earth. We must completely root out those troublemakers hiding in the shadows. The pioneers are furious. How dare anyone actually block their way? They must be tired of living. The entire outpost begins to pulsate as massive fleshy ovarian structures stir wildly, awakening a large number of weapons underground. The pioneers haven't used these weapons in a long time. They are so out of practice that there are still beings in the galaxy who dare to oppose them. So out of practice that activating these weapons is actually taking time. A huge flaw. Buzzing. Just as the pioneers start to awaken the weapons, the spatial wormhole above suddenly vibrates. What is going on? Weren't all the monsters eliminated? Identification approved. Something with monster genes. What could it be? I don't know. Let us take a look. The commotion from the wormhole catches the attention of the pioneers, who look up with great curiosity. The next moment, 5 C-type spaceships charge directly into their line of sight. The densely packed metal canisters in the spaceship's deployment chamber shock all the pioneers. They instinctively know that this thing is extremely dangerous. Hurry, invaders, there are intruders. Chapter 234. 8 shots per second. It can be said that the pioneers are a very powerful civilization. However, it is precisely because of their strength that they have become careless. The original work is a good example of this. When the dangerous wanderers suddenly burst into the wormhole and appeared before them, the opposition must have been quite bewildered. This bewilderment is now being mirrored as 5 engineer ships loaded with Blackwater come in. They are also completely caught off guard. They are totally unprepared. No, my weapons haven't been fully awakened yet. Why don't you come back later? Come back once we are ready. On the engineer mothership, Hallrose lies on the pilot platform, and the entire interior of the spaceship is vibrating. Melodious music continuously plays. Listening to this music, a smile slowly forms on Hallrose's face. The spaceship detects biological states, and the opponent hasn't even awakened the underground weapons. There is no resistance. The spaceship encounters no opposition at all. Ship No. 5 seals the wormhole to prevent black water leakage. The deployment chamber immediately projects black water. No time to waste. The opponent is completely unprepared. The spaceship was almost upon them. Yet there was no reaction at all. The voice of Hellrose trembled with excitement as he issued orders. The moment the spaceship passed through the wormhole, he realized that this was a biological civilization that had survived the Great Decline. It was a civilization on par with the engineers, but one that had survived in a more desperate manner. Their biotechnological concepts could undoubtedly provide new insights to the engineers, potentially leading to a new era of prosperity. The projection pod was ready. Controlled by humans from this universe, they wasted no time upon receiving the command and swiftly pressed the button that represented the projection. A multitude of metallic canisters rained down like a storm. Upon exploding in midair, the dark black liquid coalesced into a cloud of destruction, rushing toward the ground. Hellrose maneuvered the spaceship forward slowly, ensuring that the black liquid would engulf the entire outpost of the Pioneer race. Simultaneously, the spaceship was in communication with the mainframe of the Pioneer race. In the cockpit, a melodic flute began to play. Outside, The black mist formed by the liquid had already reached the ground. The dark fog swept through, and those pioneers remaining in place instantly turned into desiccated corpses. Their bodily fluids were drained, cells destroyed, and genetic chains dismantled. In less than a second, the most extraordinary creations of nature were reduced to inorganic matter by the black liquid. The pioneers, their offspring, and all creatures that stood in the way of the black liquid were utterly annihilated. Helrose ran ahead, and just a glance back filled him with sheer terror and despair. What on earth was this? Who are you? Why is this happening? Before he could finish his words, the pitch-black mist enveloped him in an instant, leading to his complete demise. The black liquid would bring extinction to all living beings. On the spaceship, Helrose felt as if he had returned to the past. The slaughter of the pioneers might unsettle the human crew, but for the engineers, especially the destroyers, it was an everyday occurrence. Helrose silently observed the ground until the black mist dissipated. Then he commanded, "The pioneer outpost has been cleared. Open the wormhole cloaking device, locate the equipment controlling the wormhole, and immediately change the conditions for passage. Norda, the opponent, is a genetic parasite. Release the dissolving virus and dismantle them." Helrose had completely grasped what the pioneer race was as he entered the wormhole. They had survived the Great Decline by abandoning their physical forms and preserving only their genes. Foolish. This approach was undoubtedly a form of self-castration. No wonder they were so weak and unguarded. Helrose chuckled. They are even less cautious than our engineers. Now, with the outpost secured and the wormhole under our control, human ships should be able to enter. In the Pacific Rim, He-Fan received the news that the front line had been secured and immediately issued commands across the board. The ship at position 15 held the gap, and all other ships were ready. With excitement in his voice, He-Fan stared at the holographic projection in front of him. His tone strong and resolute. Follow the formation and enter the wormhole. Go. 13 spacecraft sequentially submerged into the sea. They passed through the underwater gap wormhole and arrived at the forward base. The pioneer race's planet had no defensive measures in place, allowing the ships to ascend safely. "Commander, the forward base has been secured, and we can begin the occupation plan." He ordered, "Deploy all advantageous species and set up the prism." On He-Fan's flagship was the gift brought to the pioneer race by this universe, the Jojo and the Engineer clan. A grand gift. A total annihilation package. In an instant after the command was given, ship number 2 rapidly flew to high altitude above the planet and erected a massive prism at its conical tip. The moment the prism was set up, a huge beam of radiant heat instantly enveloped the entire vicinity of the forward base. Subsequently, a large number of seeds were dropped from the flagship. These seeds, nourished by the light from the prism and the nutrients derived from the corpses of the pioneer race and monsters, grew wildly. Within the plants, the genes set by the engineers began to spread rapidly. In just a few seconds, the entire forward base was completely covered in green. All right, the gift has arrived. He-Fan chuckled lightly. These plants would evolve into species fully adapted to this planet within 3 generations. However, due to the nature of these plants, the entire planet would be covered by them within 2 months. They would alter the atmospheric structure of the planet and dismantle the genetic codes of the native species. The pioneer race would be utterly helpless against this, because, while these plants grew rampantly, humans would release black water around the planet and launch attacks. Taking advantage of this opportunity to catch the opponent off guard, it was time to strike. Complete annihilation of the pioneer race. Was it too cruel to wipe out an entire civilization directly? That was exactly the intended effect. The pioneer race wasn't innocent either. They were more ruthless. They not only aimed to annihilate humanity, but also sought to replace humans through parasitism. In this racial war, it was either you die or I live. There was no room for negotiation. Ships number 3, 4, 5, and 6 had already taken off and entered synchronous orbit. The orbital bombardment was about to begin. This bombardment was the first round, with 15,000 hydrogen bombs, 26,000 metallic hydrogen bombs, and 5,000 antimatter bombs. The ships had ascended to synchronous orbit, with a full orbit taking 95 minutes, expected to deliver 8 bombs per second. As the Engineer clan awaited the acquisition of the opponent's biological technology within the fleet's communication system, Holos listened, and even though he was already aware of this plan, he still felt a tremor in his heart. This was only the first round of bombardment. 8 hydrogen bombs dropped every second. Hundreds of small boys kind. This was going to plow the pioneer race's planet. With the advantages of radiation-resistant plants, biological invasions, genetic attacks, and physical bombardment, does the pioneer clan still have a way out? Chapter 235. Your imagination is quite vast. In the Pacific Rim, in a certain eastern nation, deep in the southwest, from the spatial portal, enormous engineering machinery continuously emerges. The original platform has expanded by more than 10 times. Several distant peaks have been directly flattened. Watching this scene, Old Wu felt an immense joy. However, the more he looked, the more something fell off. Building a platform is understandable, and flying ships are also comprehensible. But what is this humanoid creature that is much taller than humans, with skin as pale as a ghost, and a bald head? You didn't mention that your team has aliens as well. Furthermore, what are those missiles piled up like small mountains? That yellow radiation warning sign on them looks so familiar. Old Wu rubbed his eyes, confirming that the missiles being transported from the spatial portal indeed bore a familiar radiation symbol on their warheads. Is this a hydrogen bomb? They are continuously bringing in truckloads, with dozens of hydrogen bombs piled on each vehicle. After roughly counting, Old Wu swallowed hard and instinctively took a step back, showing respect for the hydrogen bombs. In front of him, there were nearly 3,000 already, and they were still being transported, non-stop. Are you stockpiling here? This is a hydrogen bomb, not a shell. Hey, Old Wu's guess was indeed correct. At least the first batch is real stock. As for the subsequent ones, those are all new goods. With the productivity of this region, once the production line starts, there's as much as you need. Using hydrogen bombs like firecrackers is not a problem. Deuterium, tritium, uranium, or plutonium, or dozens of countries can't get enough, but one country can use them however they want. Tap, tap, tap. A strange sound of footsteps came from behind Old Wu. You must be Old Wu? The voice of Old Zhu echoed behind him. Old Wu turned around, astonished to see a robot in front of him, and asked with some confusion, "Who are you?" "I am the leader of Project 237. Now that the spatial portal is open, I think we should have a good talk." The robot in front smiled gently, nodding to add, "About cooperation." "Oh great, please." Old Wu instantly realized, suppressing the astonishment in his heart, and led Old Zhu the way. The two, along with a large group of people, headed straight for the conference room. After nearly 2 hours of discussions, what was talked about is unknown, but when Old Wu exited the conference room, the excitement on his face was hard to contain, revealing everything. Meanwhile, another large batch of hydrogen bombs, metallic hydrogen bombs, biomass energy weapon energy sources, and antimatter bombs were being transported into the breach. The first round of bombardment had not yet ended, and the ammunition for the second round was already prepared. On the Pioneer Clan's planet, if you looked from outside the planet, you would discover a peculiar sight. Every second, 8 clearly visible mushroom clouds would rise from the entire planet. Those mushroom clouds were so striking, so stunning. The pioneers on the ground were completely plunged into despair. Boom. The ground was repeatedly bombarded, and it had cracked under the heavy burden. Below, in a secret chamber, several survivors of the Pioneer Clan were huddled together in panic. What was happening outside? The main brain where the leader was located had been hijacked and taken over by the enemy fleet. Enemy ships were crazily bombarding from orbit, using crude fusion bombs. But with this quantity, we are done for. Boom. Suddenly, the ground shook violently again. Rocks fell from above, striking nearby and instantly eliciting cries of agony. When will this end? They bombarded us for 2 whole cycles. Damn it, we were completely unprepared. The enemy has gone mad. Haven T, they bombed us 7 or 8 times already. Help, help. That damn light is coming in. My hand is gone. On the Pioneer planet, several spaceships continued to orbit and bombard the planet. Due to the relentless bombardment, the planet's atmosphere was now shrouded in a cloud of dust. But it didn't matter. With the original map, we could bomb as planned. At this rate, if we bomb for another 3 hours, wait for the enemy to organize their ground forces, and then continue for 3 days, it would be enough. In the online command meeting, He-Fan held the plan and nodded seriously. Holos, who was attending the meeting, pursed his lips and silently gave a thumbs up. This level of firepower, bombarding for 3 days? Fortunately, we had captured the enemy's leader's main brain in advance. Otherwise, would there be any living beings left on the planet, except near the wormhole of the outpost base? We would till the ground first, then plant advantageous species. Not a single gene from the Pioneer planet would be left behind. Holos was also relieved that they had provoked the enemy earlier and were now in a cooperative state. The humans in this universe were truly ruthless, comparable to their destroyers. In the Pacific region, at a conference of an international assembly, only 5 hours had passed since the monster crisis began. The entire venue fell into an eerie silence. Everyone who received the news fixed their eyes on the representative from the eastern nation, Chen Jiming. Having worked together in the assembly for many years, the people here were quite familiar with Chen. "Chen, can you tell us what is going on?" The representative from the other side was the first to lose patience. He stood up and projected an old-looking photograph onto the screen. The image was blurry, but it was still clear enough to show clouds, the sky, and a hovering spaceship. After releasing the photo, the representative slowly stood up, pointed at the image, and explained, "This was taken by a crew member of our first fleet using a mechanical film camera. Mr. Chairman, please enlarge the photo." The chairman nodded and used a computer to enlarge the image. With AI processing, the clarity improved, and the markings on the spaceship's tail were clearly displayed. Several large Chinese characters caused the entire meeting to erupt in chaos. "Chen, what is going on?" someone asked. Chen Jiming chuckled lightly, pulled the microphone closer, glanced around, and said slowly under everyone's gaze, "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you have seen it. These spacecraft suddenly appeared and instantly eliminated all the level 6 monsters that emerged. We know the details, and we are not deceiving you. Is this kind of technology something we, or humanity, can possess? It is impossible, because due to the monster invasion, our controllable nuclear fusion research plan has been temporarily shelved." A representative from a certain region shook his head. This is clearly not a technology that should belong to humanity. Then what could it be? As a possibility struck him, the representative's eyes widened. Could it be time travelers? Parallel universes? Chen Jiming looked at the representative in surprise. "You have quite the imagination." Chapter 236, Show Off and Shut Down the Phone. How refreshing. Chen Jiming felt that the representative's imagination was running wild. The representative felt that Chen Jiming's imagination was also quite something. To be fair, a parallel universe isn't that much better than time travelers. Parallel universe? What do you mean? Is that even possible? Why not? With such a large spacecraft, who could possibly create it? That's a good point. With Chun Jiming's candidness, the entire conference hall of the United Nations erupted in chaos. Parallel universe. Before they could stir up more commotion, Chun Jiming raised his hand to calm them down and formally introduced. Indeed, the emblem you see represents a major Eastern power from a parallel universe. The fleet has now entered the breach, and I will introduce our enemies, the Pioneer race. Chun Jiming didn't reveal too much about the parallel universe and quickly shifted the topic back to the enemies. As he introduced them, many representatives finally realized, drenched in sweat, the sinister nature of the opponent's plan. If they truly implemented that so-called Life Wall project, it would undoubtedly end in tragedy. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, I have informed you of the sequence of events. Chun Jiming smirked. His true intention was about to be revealed. The parallel universe is striking against the Pioneer civilization, and the capacity of the space gate is limited. We urgently need to establish an ammunition supply center outside of space. However, he paused, squinting slightly, and awkwardly added, you also know that the previous 12 hunter mechas have exhausted a lot of our liquid funds. Once Chun Jiming finished speaking, everyone present understood. Immediately, a European representative cursed inwardly. Damn it, if I remember correctly, you used our money to cover the costs of those 12 hunter mechas, right? You just want to scrape together some funds. As Chun Jiming's gaze became increasingly sharp, the European representative's mouth twitched. Scrape together? No. We're just looking to raise some funds to help ease the logistical burden on the forces from the parallel universe. We understand. The European representative immediately stood up and nodded vigorously. Of course, how could we not provide? If we don't show you a monster, how can that be? The other side spaceship is covered in Chinese characters, so what else is impossible? Yes, we all agree. The relevant parties also agree. Listening to the voices of agreement from all representatives, Chun Jiming couldn't help but smile broadly. With your money, we will learn the technology of parallel universes and use it ourselves. This way we save on costs. Perfect. Now, please transfer the raised funds to our account immediately, everyone. Those with money contribute money. Those with resources contribute resources, and those without either can support us by purchasing our products. Chun Jiming gently clapped his hands, his eyes squinting with joy. This time, he could really rake in a profit from the domestic market. With costs covered and additional resources, he would be waiting for a promotion upon his return. In this universe, at the underground section of the Shishan base, Fang Jing did not leave with the fleet after the space gate opened, but returned here instead. He thought that going with the fleet might cause more trouble than help. It was better to relax at the base, enjoy some leisure time, and play virtual reality games. Plus, he could also take a stroll in the Jojo world. Of course, the most important thing was now. Fang Jing turned on his phone, opened a messaging app, and clicked on his close friend Lin Shi's chat window. He quickly sent 6 images, each showing him in the cockpit of the Crimson Storm, looking strikingly handsome. The pose and the mechanical ambience around him were impressive. 5 minutes later, his friend Lin. Did you go to some comic convention in a simulation pod? Fang Jing, look at the quality, the finish, the lighting. Does this look like a simulation pod? Lin Shi fell silent. A smirk appeared on Fang Jing's face. He knew his goal had been achieved. Within a minute, his messaging app showed an alarming number of 99 unread messages. Lin Shi, no way, is this real? Where? Reply. Haha, teasing his friend. Fang Jing turned off his phone, and his mood suddenly brightened. Let us go. Now's the time for a good trip to Jiuzhou. Due to confidentiality restrictions, Fang Jing couldn't move around freely in this universe. But that didn't mean he had to stay at the Shishan base. Don't forget, there's also the Jiuzhou world. In the Jiuzhou world, he could go wherever he wanted. With a thought, he passed through the space gate to arrive in the Jiuzhou world. However, something seemed off in the central transit square of Jiuzhou world. In the center of the enormous square, the highest elder of the engineers, Dino, was holding a staff, looking so excited that he seemed about to transform. He was flailing his arms and legs like a madman. What is going on? Fang Jing raised an eyebrow, curious about what was happening. Were they making significant progress in researching the technology of the precursor race? Zhou Yuan had been in Jiuzhou world, helping to verify the number of hydrogen bombs. And upon seeing Fang Jing approach, he put down his work and walked over directly. Significant progress? Fang Jing asked, puzzled. Yes. It said that the genetic propagation technology used by the precursor race in a certain generation could help them overcome a major genetic recession. Zhou Yuan patted his head, trying hard to remember. It seemed that their genes were going to be completed, and the path of biotechnology could continue. No wonder they were so happy. Fang Jing understood and stroked his chin. No wonder more than 20 engineers hugged each other and cried. Hey, but we can't just hand everything over to them. Zhou Yuan shrugged. Their technology was already superior to ours. Letting them develop unchecked would be a disaster. But at least it leaves a glimmer of hope. Indeed. Fang Jing shook his head. Anyone with a brain wouldn't allow the engineers to continue their development unchecked. The other party would still have to work honestly under their supervision. When the opportunity arises, they would naturally be set free. The two sat quietly, watching the scene in the square where engineers embraced and wept. A race that had reached its endpoint, with thousands of years of technology making no progress, was now facing decline. They finally saw hope. At this moment, no one could truly empathize with them. This was a unique joy belonging to their civilization. Fang Jing watched with envious eyes, turning his head and unable to resist asking, What about the attack on the Pioneer race? Probably, maybe, there should still be survivors. Zhou Yuan glanced at the hydrogen bombs being loaded onto trucks and licked his lips. Huh. Fang Jing opened his mouth wide, following his gaze. They're still bringing more in? How long has it been since the explosion? 9 hours. Hiss. Fang Jing gasped and stuttered for a moment, unable to speak. The hydrogen bomb had been detonating for 9 hours. Could there still be living beings on this planet? A moment of silence for the Pioneer race, amen. Chapter 237. The Power of the Sun, Boiling Mountains, and Seas. On the mother planet of the Pioneer race in the Pacific Rim, this planet, which was very similar to Earth, had become severely damaged. The sky was filled with radiation clouds, and the dust blown into the atmosphere formed a thick barrier. The light and heat of the star were isolated here. The surface temperature of the planet was rapidly dropping. In just one day, the temperature had decreased by 25 degrees. Moreover, this was not the end. The temperature continued to drop. If this trend continued, in just 2 more days, only the equator would be suitable for life. I recalled the Great Ice Age on Earth. Standing beside the command platform in the spaceship's cockpit, Fleet Commander He Fan murmured. That's right. It is said that Earth also experienced a devastating ice age, during which only the equator and the depths of the oceans had resilient life surviving. The intelligence officer beside him nodded. Oh, He Fan raised an eyebrow, looking thoughtfully at the planet in the holographic projection. Since life on ancient Earth could survive such an ice age, there is no reason for the Pioneer race, with its flourishing biological civilization, to be easily extinguished, right? Exactly, old He, which is why we need to bomb for 3 days straight, and then deploy Blackwater in key areas. The arms officer had been quite pleased these past few days. The firepower deficiency syndrome had improved significantly. He let out a hearty laugh, his eyes gleaming with intensity. However, He Fan continued to ponder in a key area. He was fixated on the oceans of the Pioneer planet, deep in thought. The directives above stated that not a single trace of the opponent's genes could be left behind. By the way, how is the reading situation on the engineer's side? Horus has already conducted readings on the opponent's main brain, and our people are assisting there as well. The intelligence officer waved to bring up a document, simultaneously using intelligent programs to read it while explaining. The Pioneers dominate the entire galaxy and the Andromeda Galaxy. Undeniably a supreme civilization. However, as biological civilizations developed to their peak, the issue of genetic reproduction became increasingly severe, ultimately leading to the emergence of many factions over tens of thousands of years, just like the Engineer faction. Among these were the Retrogression faction, the Annihilation faction, the Parasitic faction, and so on. So is this their home planet? He Fan suddenly understood. So this is the home planet of the Parasitic faction? Indeed. The main brain recorded that since the birth of several factions, the Parasitic faction has controlled a vast population, while the Annihilation and Retrogression factions deemed the 2 galaxies useless and directly left the galaxy and the Andromeda Galaxy. The intelligence officer chuckled lightly. Then, as the Parasitic faction continued to graze over the 2 galaxies, their territory shrank and their population dwindled. In the end, only this planet remained? He Fan raised an eyebrow. No, there are 3 more planets, but those 3 planets are merely their gene banks, in case the main planet's gene parasitism plan encounters issues. The intelligence officer stroked his chin and then realized. No wonder before the war, the Engineer faction guaranteed that the range controlled by the Pioneer faction would be very limited. I didn't expect the declining biological civilization's influence to shrink so quickly. It seems that biological civilizations truly understand each other. Even the strongest civilization has a day of decline. The Engineer civilization was also a super strong civilization, and the galaxy has been plunged into a civilization vacuum. But strong as it is, it must still decline. Strength refers to power and technological level. Decline is an irreconcilable internal issue. These two are not contradictory. Just like the definition of decay, decay has never equated to weakness. Decay means internal contradictions can no longer be reconciled. Therefore, some nations are meant to decay, while those that are strong remain strong. Where are the 3 planets located? He Fan nodded, and after confirming the range of the Pioneer faction's influence, he finally felt at ease. Not far from here, within the same stellar system. The intelligence officer opened the star map obtained from the Pioneer faction. This is a stellar system clearly influenced by artificial intervention, with 1 star and 4 planets all within the habitable zone. Very good. The enemy's intelligence has been completely grasped. He Fan waved to switch the view back to the Pioneer planet, pointing fiercely at the ocean, suddenly saying in a stern voice, I'm still not at ease with the ocean. This time, the order is to completely exterminate the Pioneer faction. Immediately report and request a few artificial suns. Yes, the intelligence officer faithfully reported the command of the commander-in-chief. The higher-ups are very concerned about this campaign against the Pioneer faction. The request from Commander He Fan was almost instantly approved. In the world of Jiuzhou, in front of the massive space gate, Fang Jing and Zhou Yuan finished chatting and saw a gigantic spherical object with a radius of up to 1 kilometer being slowly transported to the transfer plaza by a super crane. This massive sphere was entirely made of metal, covered with a dense layer of first wall armor. If I'm not mistaken, the first wall armor is used for controlled nuclear fusion, right? Fang Jing gaped, staring blankly at the sight before him, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the first wall armor. The entire sphere was covered in this armor, arranged in neat rows that would drive anyone with a fear of clusters insane. Zhou Yuan also looked puzzled. This was beyond his knowledge. This was controlled nuclear fusion, just with the internal structure flipped outward. Nearby, a passing scientist smiled slightly at Fang Jing and explained, "This is a super artificial sun. Once activated, a massive high-temperature layer will form around the sphere. The core temperature will reach 300 million degrees, gradually decreasing outward, with a decrease radius of 300 kilometers. In the 300-kilometer zone, the temperature will reach 1,000 degrees. In other words, this artificial sun would have a high-temperature zone of 300 kilometers. What is this for?" Fang Jing was astonished. This artificial sun didn't seem like a heat source to be placed in orbit. It looked more like a weapon. Indeed, this enormous high-temperature zone was clearly designed as a weapon. Of course, it's a weapon. The scientist chuckled lightly and shook his head. Anything can be a weapon if used properly. This was requested by Commander He Fan of the expedition fleet, intended to eliminate the pioneer race. The high temperature will annihilate all forms of life. If there is no destruction, it means the temperature isn't high enough or powerful enough. Wow. Fang Jing and Zhou Yuan widened their eyes. This device, with a core temperature of 300 million degrees, would incinerate everything in its path. Moreover, critically, it wasn't just one. Fang Jing noticed that at least 5 of these were being slowly dragged into the space gate at the transfer plaza. 5 superheat sources capable of radiating across 300 kilometers. Rumor had it that the oceans of the Pioneer S planet were much smaller than Earth's. And with such a combination of conditions, he suddenly realized that this thing might be used to boil the seas. Chapter 238, Annihilation in the Pacific Rim. On the Pioneer planet, only the area around the outpost base remained unscathed. Dense dominant species were waiting for the outside storm to subside, ready to seize the planet with the power of plants. However, its priority had unknowingly slipped back, because the artificial suns had already been delivered. Thanks to the expanded space gate, 5 super artificial suns were directly dragged over by the engineer's spacecraft. Utilizing the gravity void in the center of the C-shaped spacecraft, the artificial suns were effortlessly lifted like toy balls. In the joint fleet, Hellrose, who had just returned from spreading Blackwater, happened to witness this scene. Why is the engineer's ship being treated like a ball? Hellrose was taken aback, recalling the short videos he had seen at the base. This seemed to be implying something about the engineers. Was it suggesting they were being treated like a ball? Hellrose thought, could it be that we performed poorly? Commander, what are these devices? Hellrose cautiously inquired over the communication channel. Oh, they are for attack purposes, just right for your ship to transport. He Fan chuckled lightly and said to Hellrose, just in time for your return, let us see its power. Power? Hellrose was somewhat confused about the function of this iron ball. Was this the fundamental logical difference between biological civilizations and others? Ignoring Hellrose's confusion, He Fan on the flagship immediately commanded loudly, initiate the artificial sun program. The program is now active. Proceed to the ocean's surface and prepare for deployment. Understood. The 5 C-type ships controlled by humans immediately maneuvered the spherical artificial sun away from the outpost base and ascended above the ocean. Deploy the artificial sun and return immediately. He Fan's expression was stoic, his voice filled with intent as he ordered, full power to the artificial sun. The intelligence system will immediately plot the course. This vast ocean must be thoroughly scanned. Beep, beep, beep. The intelligence system responded instantly on the holographic projection. The entire ocean map of the Pioneer Star appeared, and the locations of the 5 artificial suns were marked. Subsequently, a series of yellow dashed lines appeared on the projection, instantly filling the entire ocean with the pathways of the artificial suns. At that moment, on the ocean's surface, the 5 ships, spaced 600 kilometers apart, skimmed close to the water, and the moment they deployed the artificial sun, they all fled without hesitation. Not fleeing. That was a 300-kilometer high-temperature zone. At this distance and temperature, staying put would be like flying a ship straight into the sun, certain death. The ship would be vaporized. The 5 ships operated like bombers delivering nuclear payloads in the last century. They deployed and took off, fearing they wouldn't escape, not daring to linger for even a moment. All right, you've reached a safe position. He Fan chuckled lightly at the command post. A superliminal ship can't escape from 300 kilometers? Activate the artificial sun immediately. There might still be a Pioneer base hidden in this ocean. We must ensure a thorough job. Commander He Fan exhaled heavily after speaking. After having a smooth journey for so long and seeing little bloodshed, giving such a complete extermination order still felt slightly resistant to him. Clenching his fist, he allowed himself this once, for the first time. Next time, there could be no softness in his heart. Yes, the execution code has been confirmed, activating the artificial sun, with a hissing sound, as 5 scorching pebbles were dropped. The broth in the stone pot instantly boiled, and the neatly arranged prawns were fully cooked in less than a few seconds. The delicious aroma immediately filled the entire room. Hey, okay, let's get to it. We still need to head to the southern hemisphere later. Aren't you going to catch kangaroos? They've been overrunning the place lately. Zhou Yuan called out a couple of times and picked up his chopsticks, heading straight for the prawns. This boiled soup is fragrant. No wonder it's a famous dish from that region. As the suddenly bursting aroma filled the air, Fang Jing's appetite surged, and he quickly grabbed a large prawn. Originally raw, the prawn was fully cooked in just a few seconds after being placed in the hot stone. The taste was indescribable. While enjoying his vacation in the region, Fang Jing devoured 3 big bowls of rice. Meanwhile, at an underwater observation station in the Pacific, several pioneers were anxiously pacing. What to do? Someone has invaded us first. And the entire planet's surface has almost been turned upside down. The bombardment hasn't stopped. It's been 2 whole days. We can't contact the ground base. We must be the last survivors. What should we do? How should we handle this? Why not just stay here? There's plenty of food. And we have ample space to move. Hey, that's a good idea. We'll wait until they retreat before going out. The pioneers at the underwater base quickly made a decision. They decided to hunker down. If the enemy wanted to bomb for a few days, this position wouldn't be easy to hit. The interior was temperature controlled with a self-circulation system, so they could wait indefinitely. With the decision made, their initial anxiety faded, and they decided to relax. Let it be as it may. However, their good times only lasted a few hours. Wait, there's a huge heat source signal passing over us? A heat source? How hot can it be? Our base is protected by a magnetic shell capable of withstanding temperatures of over 100 million degrees. One of the lobster people lounging in the rest area waved their claws dismissively. What heat source could harm them in the slightest? But the lobster person who reported it sounded terrified. He exclaimed, but the core temperature of that heat source is over 300 million degrees. And we're right under their 200 million degree zone. What? The lounging lobster person jumped in shock and fell from the rest area. How much? 200 million degrees, the lobster person reported helplessly. This temperature left all the pioneers present in stunned silence. There were still 2 cycles to contact, estimated at 15 Earth seconds. No need to say anything more. The pioneers in the base might as well wait for their end. This temperature would turn them into lobster meat. 15 seconds later, a blinding flash of scorching light shot towards them. The base shell, capable of withstanding temperatures close to 100 million degrees, melted instantly. Along with it, the 300 miles of ocean above vaporized into ash. If you were standing outside the Pioneer planet at that moment, you would witness a shocking scene. The oceans of the entire planet rapidly receded. 5 blazing light orbs rolled around in the ocean, and the entire sea was boiling. On the other side of the planet, an endless deluge is sweeping through the sky, carrying dust and creating catastrophic disasters. The plan to boil the seas has been completed, bombing missions have been accomplished, and the Blackwater has been fully deployed. Besides the outpost bases, there are no traces of the pioneering race left anywhere else on this planet. He-Fan sat in the command position, staring at the holographic projection of the planet that had completely changed its appearance, remaining silent for a long time. The pioneering race was too powerful. Humanity could only continue to launch relentless assaults. If they hesitated, the situation could turn dramatically as soon as the enemy reacted. Therefore, the strikes must be ruthless and aimed at the complete extermination of the opponent. Beside him, Hellos also fell silent. This was incredibly ruthless. They annihilated a faction merely by using Blackwater to eliminate intelligent life. What you are doing is directly wiping out all life forms with genetic material on this planet, while also digging it up. However, he did not express much. After all, this pioneering race was also aimed at exterminating parasitic humanity. One could only say that this is interstellar warfare. This is the war of races. In the realm of interstellar conflict, the destruction of planets and celestial bodies is commonplace. A single misstep could lead to the annihilation of a race. Chapter 239. Handcrafted machine tools. It's quite difficult. The war in the Pacific Rim has ended. Taking advantage of their initial advantage, the pioneering race was caught off guard. One misstep led to another. Seizing the opportunity, they took its life directly. When Elder Wu learned this news, he smiled for a long time with his mouth wide open. The 11-year monster war had created an irreconcilable blood feud between them and the pioneering race. Regarding their extermination, Elder Wu could only use one word to describe his feelings. That is, exhilarating. The United Nations Conference soon received confirmed news. The parasitic faction of the pioneering race had been attacked, and their main star was captured. The parasitic faction had been eradicated, while the regression and destruction factions had fled to 2 different star systems. When the news spread, the entire conference fell silent. It was such significant news that they needed some time to sort it out. First of all, the pioneering race is not just one faction. Other factions have left the galaxy. Furthermore, the faction that invaded through the wormhole has had its main star taken. This means that their greatest enemy, the pioneering race, has basically been dealt with. The monster war is over. However, even though the 11-year war has ended, why can't they feel happy? Especially the representative from a certain country, whose expression turned pale instantly. The great enemy has been defeated, and their alliance against it is falling apart. With the alliance disbanded, wouldn't they be heading back to an era of disputes over national interests? If it were just that, the representative from that country wouldn't mind, as they still had significant advantages at this time. But there is a catch. The space gate of the parallel universe opened in the Eastern Great Nation. The ones who came to help were also marked with the military insignia of the Eastern Great Nation. Isn't this blatantly favoring the other side? They have driven away the enemy, only to have a big brother appear. Moreover, this big brother is from the Eastern Great Nation. At the United Nations Conference, several individuals who were initially extremely excited began to calm down and realize that something was off. This situation was not right. Just like in World War II. When the war ended, the once united front against a common enemy quickly fell apart. Now that the war against extraterrestrials was over, the politicians present started to contemplate their own interests. At that moment, the representative from a certain large nation, sitting next to Chun Jiming, leaned over and whispered, "Chun, The war is over. We can discuss the oil trade now. Our delegation will visit shortly. Chen Jiming, being a seasoned player, was aware of the underlying dynamics. The representative from a certain country looked increasingly uneasy, almost as green as the plants nearby. The future situation in the Pacific region was about to get interesting. Chen Jiming chuckled inwardly. He didn't know how the others would fare, but as far as he was concerned, they were on the rise. On the front lines. At the outpost base, He Fan stood before a wormhole, donned in a biological exosuit. The wormhole, belonging to the pioneer race, was a beautiful blue sphere in the sky. Any light or object that came into contact with it was distorted and bent inward. This was the sole target of the war and a prize that needed to be preserved. The wormhole's stunning structure surprised everyone. Who would have thought that these beings had such advanced technology? Holos stared in awe at the beauty of the wormhole. It was a testament to the former prosperity of the pioneer race. The ability to open wormholes indicated that their home star system must have been immensely thriving. With thousands of planets and populations in the trillions, He Fan murmured to himself, captivated by the sight. However, after a brief moment, he could only manage a wry smile. In this universe, even faster than light travel was still a challenge. How could they tackle wormholes? It seemed best to leave the research on this for now and take their time. Despite the technological advancements made through various worlds, particularly the upgrades from the Wandering Earth, the foundational knowledge remained too weak. Even in the Wandering Earth scenario, the scientific base was thin for true interstellar civilizations. Training a scientist was not an easy task, and certainly not something that could be accomplished in a day or two. Especially not across all fields. The universities were nearly filled to capacity, and engineers were being pulled into teaching roles, resulting in only a handful of usable scholars emerging. Scientific development could not be rushed. Progress would have to be gradual. The technology of the wormhole was somewhat different from their spacecraft designs. Holos nodded, acknowledging that even their engineering clan found it perplexing. However, there was no need to worry. They would eventually figure it out. For now, this universe should focus on thoroughly understanding their own technology. Holos turned to glance at the chaos outside the base and shook his head. They were now tied to this universe inextricably. The technology of the Pioneer clan is quite a gift, enough for them to serve humanity for a while. Indeed, after such a long time, we've only just touched the threshold of the technology from the Zhou family in the Jiuzhou region. There really are no shortcuts in technological development. He Fan shook his head and turned to give orders. The fleet will stand by here, monitoring the entire planet. The first phase is over. So let everyone take turns to rest properly. Also, our scientists have been eager to come and take a look at the wormhole, right? Notify the space gate that they can bring them over. Although they probably won't come up with anything significant, it's still good for the scientists to broaden their horizons instead of just drooling over the space gate. Comrade Feng Jing was even a bit scared that they might rush over directly. Meanwhile, in the Jiuzhou world, specifically in the underground section of the Jiuzhou United University, Tang Wire, a scientist from a different universe, suddenly sneezed while working on a microlight propulsion machine. He rubbed his nose and stared at the machine in front of him, his mouth twitching. He seriously doubted whether he had made a foolish decision back then. The promises made by the other party seemed grand at the time, but in reality, it was all just empty talk. It was frustrating. They had a space gate, yet the technology was still so lacking. How could he replicate a superluminal engine with such poor equipment? It felt like he was, as an expert in spaceship manufacturing and the designer of the Prometheus, reduced to hand-cranking a machine here. Not that it was completely manual. If it were, he might be coughing up blood. Using a 7-axis laser CNC machine, he had barely managed to produce a microlight propulsion device. After reviewing the test data, Tang Wire wiped the sweat from his brow. We're still 100 years away from producing precision parts for superluminal spacecraft. Fortunately, there were no issues with materials science. The materials available in Jiuzhou civilization were more than adequate. The rest was to continue developing the machinery. Tang Wire looked at his team and shook his head helplessly. He felt like he was a person from 2040 trying to retrace humanity's technological path. Well, we've now replicated the steam age. Our goal is the controllable nuclear fusion era. Chapter 240, Getting Fired Up. I'm a professional. Tang Wire and many scientists from the alien world formed this team to create a superluminal engine using resources from both this universe and the Jiuzhou world. The first challenge they faced was that the industrial foundation and production equipment in these two worlds were far too outdated. Thus, they could only start from the basics of producing equipment manually. It was akin to traveling back several hundred years and attempting to recreate an internal combustion engine from scratch. To do this, they had to manually create machine tools, study materials science and processing, and eventually produce a steam engine, upgrade the machine tools, and reprocess the parts. Oh, and they also needed to create an antimatter engine. Once the antimatter engine was developed, they would also need to establish large-scale antimatter production facilities. Sigh. If it really doesn't work, controlled nuclear fusion can also be an option, but it requires a bit more power. In any case, everything has to start over. Fortunately, Tang Wire is not alone. He at least has resources from several worlds. As a result, when he looked back in the lab, he saw several old friends slumped in their chairs. They were still far from producing the atomic knife machine tool with a micro-punching machine, needing dozens more versions. Josun, the designer of the Kuwait, was lying on the desk, looking at the micro-punching machine with a face full of despair. I'd rather be in class at that university in the eastern region. I really don't want to be here. Although they had knowledge in this area, actually getting hands-on experience was exhausting. Attending classes during the day and coming over to climb the tech tree during breaks. It's exhausting. No, it's not that they can't handle it. It's just that the biotechnology here is ridiculously advanced. With such a high-intensity lifestyle, they surprisingly didn't feel tired. Only mentally fatigued. Looking at his old friends, and then at the micro-punching machine, Tang Wire suddenly felt a bit teary. It seemed like the gap was quite outrageous. I should just sit down and rest for a bit. Think of a way. In the distance, in the inspection room, Chang Wile, who was responsible for observing these scientists, keenly noticed their situation. He quickly waved to a nearby guard. When the guard approached, he leaned in and whispered, "These scientists seem a bit down. Aren't they supposed to be battling some pioneers recently? I heard they have wormhole technology. Go notify old Joe and ask him to send over a holographic projection. Due to the limitations of space and time, each universe communicates through dedicated lines via spatial gates. The dedicated lines were occupied by various technological materials, and other less critical information could simply pass through a gate." Yes. The guard stood at attention, saluted, and immediately jogged away. Watching the guard leave, Chang Wile smirked. Down in spirit? Once that holographic recording arrives, these scientists will definitely be revitalized. Revitalized? With that thought, Chang Wile happily waved to another guard and quietly instructed, "Get another batch of that stimulant and recovery agent the engineers developed. Keep it on hand here. We can't let their bodies suffer." Got it. The guard accepted the order and left. Chang Wile was even happier now. With both physical and mental fatigue addressed, I really deserve a medal. But you can't deny that biotechnology is impressive. Once the recovery agent is taken, all muscle soreness and fatigue disappear, and with no side effects. The Special Forces kids love and hate this stuff at the same time, huh? Special Forces. They really train us hard. If we break a bone, it grows back in minutes. The instructor is a devil, a devil. Less than 5 minutes later, the guard who went to fetch the holographic projection returned. He handed a spherical player to Chang Wile. Chang Wile patted his shoulder, took the item, and turned to walk into the lab. At that moment, in the lab, more than a dozen old scientists were slacking off and goofing around. Tap, 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 tap. Hearing footsteps, Tang Wire slowly looked up. "Oh, it's Chang. Is there something you need?" Tang Wire was quite familiar with Chang. Whatever he needed, he just had to mention it, and the other party would immediately find it for him. "Oh, I see a few of you are on a break. And the first phase of the frontline battle has just ended, so I came to chat with everyone." Chang Wile was the kind of person who, at the outset, presented a harmless image, sharing updates from the frontline. Frontline? Sure enough, as soon as this was mentioned, Tang Wire and the others exchanged glances. A hint of confusion in their eyes. What frontline? Where's the fighting? They had been in the laboratory and were completely unaware. What frontline? Xiao Sun became interested. Quickly getting up, a few laid-back scientists also perked up their ears. "Oh, you don't know?" Chang Wile pretended to be surprised. Casually pulling up a chair and sharing, a new spatial gate has opened, and the biological civilization on the other side is invading a parallel universe's Earth. We lent a hand, and now we're already in a firefight on their main star. Let's create a good image for them. How's the battle going? The biological civilization has reached their main star, so we should be close to victory, right? What I'm concerned about is what technology this parallel universe has. Yes. What technology do they have, Chang? Is there any captured data? As soon as this was said, the scientists in the room instantly became animated, and they actively asked this question. Chang Wile smirked, seeing the excited expressions on the scientists' faces, knowing his goal had been achieved. In the next moment, he took out a silver sphere and smiled at everyone. "Of course, there is data. This is first-hand information I fought to get for you all. Let us see what it is." Xiao Sun made a short sprint and took the best viewing position. The others quickly surrounded him as well. Seeing everyone was engaged, Chang Wile didn't hesitate and immediately pressed a protrusion on the metal sphere. A blue light shot out from the metal sphere, projecting a three-dimensional image in the air. The image gradually became clearer and clearer. A spherical gap in the seabed appeared, and the scene moved, entering the sphere. The surroundings immediately became elongated as the space and image flowed rapidly. Then, in the next moment, the scene suddenly changed, and the same blue light sphere appeared in the background of the image. Tang Wire's pupils dilated. "A wormhole. This is a wormhole." Xiao Sun immediately jumped up excitedly. "A wormhole? That was just a wormhole." "That's right, it's a wormhole, and it's the one our enemies use to deploy troops. However, we have now taken control of it." Chang Wile's voice suddenly became long and enticing, like a devil tempting. "In the future, it will be up to you to study this wormhole technology thoroughly." Tang Wire understood his words. This big opportunity, they had to seize it. After all, this was wormhole technology. "Xiao Sun." Tang Wire took a deep breath, suppressing his excitement, and shouted, "What?" Josen was excitedly waving his hands. For him, nothing compared to researching more advanced technology. "I remember on Earth, the alien world, how many spaceship scientists do you know?" Tang Wei's eyes sparkled as he stared intently at Josen. "Bro, whether we can quickly study wormholes depends on you." "That's right. A few of them are still working at the scrapyard." Josen nodded in agreement, though he was somewhat puzzled as to why Tang Wei was asking this. "Yes, it's those few at the scrapyard, I'm telling you." Tang Wei leaned closer to Josen and whispered, "You do this, and then that." Josen's expression changed from confusion to sudden shock, and finally to hesitation. "Is that really a good idea?" Chapter 241. Dear Malt. In the underground section of the Kyushu United University, having witnessed the virtual projection of images passing through a wormhole, Tang Wei took a deep breath and decided to take decisive action. They could no longer rely on manual labor to produce productivity tools and climb the technological tree. They had to outsmart the situation. With his brain buzzing with excitement, the first thing that came to mind was Joseon's friends. Those friends guarding the scrapyard. This scrapyard is not a graveyard, but an equipment recycling and destruction factory. If Tang Wei remembered correctly, Joseon had once relied on these friends to obtain resources from the Velen destruction factory. These resources, known as external water, involved packaging and selling old equipment that was supposed to be destroyed to some small companies. Although these items were outdated and needed replacing, they were still fully usable. At least a dozen generations more advanced than the equipment here. If they could trick them into coming over, they would be set. Tang Wei could only say that the spaceship coming here would probably take 2 years, and even if they worked on screws for 2 years, they might not be able to reach the level of the old equipment. Why didn't I think of this sooner? He slapped his forehead in frustration, realizing how foolish he had been to toil away on the machine tools for so long. Tang Wei was almost laughing in exasperation at himself. Joseon was also dumbfounded. He looked at Tang Wei and stammered, "Wouldn't it be a bit wrong to trick both the people and the equipment over? What's wrong with that?" Tang Wei made a shushing gesture, glancing around cautiously at the other scientists, then whispered to Joseon, "Keep your voice down. Do you want to study the engineer spaceship? Even wormholes?" "Of course." Joseon nodded firmly. He had surrendered for this very reason. Staying on Earth was so boring. Exactly. Tang Wei pressed his hands down and raised an eyebrow, saying seriously, "Think about it. With your relationship with those scientists, if you write to them, they'll definitely bring something over. Once they arrive, with both people and equipment in place." At this point, a sly glint flashed in Tang Wei's eyes as he smiled broadly. "We'll make it clear in advance that when they come, we can just find a couple of people to take our places. Then we can directly go study other projects." After saying this, Tang Wei gave Joseon a hearty pat on the shoulder, speaking earnestly. It's been agreed in advance that their positions can be set, and they can be redirected to research other things. The engineer's spacecraft and the wormhole made Joseon's eyes shine with anticipation. This can be done. As for the friends in the graveyard, ahem, one must go to great lengths for friends. I directly stabbed my friend in the ribs, and he can be considered as having done the same for me. Who knows, they might come and thank me in the future. Let's do it. Joseon nodded heavily. This matter is settled. Great. Tang Wei showed a teachable expression on his face, patted his back, and immediately walked over to Chongwei's side, quietly pulling him a bit. Those who could be arranged here are certainly not dullards. Since earlier, he had noticed that these two were acting a bit sneaky. Now that they have come to him, how could he let them go? While the other scientists were still observing the holographic projection, Chongwei waved his lowered hand, signaling Tang Wei to come over. "What's the matter?" "It's like this." Tang Wei looked around to ensure no one was paying attention to them, and immediately whispered an explanation. As soon as he finished speaking, Chongwei's eyes widened as he stared at Tang Wei. Tang Wei looked firmly at Chongwei. "Tang Wei, I really want to research this." "Okay. I will apply for you immediately. Once it's done, you can go to whichever department you want." I didn't expect this surprise. Chongwei immediately dashed out the door, shouting as he left, "Guards, ensure their safety. I'll be right back." Just a quarter of an hour later, a private message was sent from the transmitter left on the Cuvette to the alien world of Earth. The message was encoded, and the recipient was the Earth Villain Scrap Equipment Processing Factory, referred to as the Graveyard. Message content: Dear Mr. Malty, I am Joseon. I believe the departure of the Cuvette has shocked the entire solar system, and our discovery lives up to the hustle. I have the following request. Please help me with the machine tools, processing equipment, and material production lines that need to be replaced in Villain. Ensure they are sent via spaceship. The message transformed into a beam of light, and, with the help of communication devices, sped towards the Earth Traffic Control Center at superluminal speed. After completing this operation, the communicator let out a heavy sigh. Nearby, Zhou Zesh also smiled lightly. He never expected such a surprise. Chongwei has some skills. No wonder he is his student. Little Chong. Doesn't he love metals and claim he wants to surpass Sun Zong? Zhou Zesh waved his hand at Zhou Weirong and instructed. Once this matter is accomplished, have the preparation department award him a big and heavy medal. At the same time, at the Jiuzhou United University, underground section, biological laboratory, Cyril wiped the sweat from his forehead. In front of him was a containment testing platform, which housed over 20 small white mice in separate compartments. The ancestral virus No. 81 black water alteration species test had a total of 26 samples, all of which were short-lived species with a lifespan of 1 year. The virus injection time had already passed 2 years, with a survival rate of 100. He carefully observed the computer's video recordings. 26 experimental mice, specifically bred from a certain world, were white lab mice with a lifespan of only 1 year. Surprisingly, they all lived up to 2 years. Their bodies showed no abnormalities. All organs were normal, and genetic traits remained unchanged. Looking at the dense stream of data on the intelligent recording system, Cyril exhaled heavily. His grip was tight, and the excitement in his heart was beyond words. The second step of the ancestral virus in extending human lifespan had achieved complete success in biological experiments. With nearly infinite energy and resources, they launched an assault towards the boundaries of lifespan. His slightly trembling hand controlled the robotic arm, slowly picking up a glass tube filled with green solution in the isolation chamber. Watching the emerald liquid, Cyril's lips gradually curled into a smile that became increasingly unrestrained. He was only a few steps away from success. The number 81 reagent could extend life by several decades at the very least. He seemed to see endless glory waving at him. The Nobel Prize? No, the Cyril Prize, the highest award in biology across numerous parallel universes, was about to be established. So, Blackwater really is a good thing. It can be used for biological research and also as a world-ending weapon. No wonder the engineering civilization loves to use it. Once you use it, you're hooked. Chapter 242. Deep Cultivation. The war against the Pioneer clan has entered the second phase of its concluding stage. Superior plant species will quickly occupy the entire Pioneer star, further eliminating the traces of biological existence on this planet. Currently, He-Fan's entire fleet remains stationed at the outpost base, waiting for the development of this process. Additionally, in the Pacific region, the ownership of the Pacific Ocean is beyond doubt. No one dares to question it. The subsequent supply fleet has directly constructed a transit artificial island in the center of the Pacific Ocean. An island situated in the middle of the sea, right above the gap. The completion of the island officially declares that this universe and a certain world have formally taken over the Earth of the Pacific universe. That's right. A formal takeover. It's that domineering. This Earth is under the protection of the Eastern Power, and that's my final word. Who agrees? Who opposes? Old me. No words to say. Little Lee Ben, you've said enough. No need to call anymore. This time, the behavior of a certain country was unusually obedient. Especially after watching the footage of the Pioneer star being bombed, it was frighteningly compliant. Without a second thought, Lee Ben, the Koreans, and the entire bases of East Asia and the Middle East immediately relocated. The world police can no longer play that role. For countries around the world, it was like chasing away a monster and inviting a true ancestor. Technological assistance to the Eastern Power of the Pacific has also begun. An old Wu outside the empty door was smiling so broadly, it seemed his face would split. Where can you find a direct, full set of technology packages at the start? From machine tools, processing, intelligent manufacturing, to controllable nuclear fusion, an all-encompassing package. Moreover, this universe directly dragged entire old production lines to the Pacific region. With the space gate being so large, it's exhilarating. This is the rhythm of receiving a dragon-slaying sword with just a click. What happens when two worlds support the Eastern Power of the Pacific Rim? Something astonishing occurs that leaves all nations on Earth in disbelief. After bringing the production line over, technicians from the Juzhou world teach hands-on. The production line is ready to use right after being plugged in, with a complete set from materials to screws, from the outer shell to the inner walls. In just 15 days, the first controllable nuclear fusion power plant is lit up. The speed of connecting to the grid is truly astonishing. It can be said that every day is different, with no repetition. Some low-level technologies from this universe and Juzhou are directly sent over in full sets. The scientists responsible for the reception are going crazy with excitement. The key is that these two worlds are not just throwing things around. They are providing a complete industrial set, covering technologies from various fields and industries. This is equivalent to recreating technological thresholds for the Eastern Power of the Pacific Rim world. It's like jumping a grade. Other countries are extremely envious. However, while envy and jealousy exist, when desire overwhelms reason, they immediately pull up videos of parallel world fleets bombing the Pioneer planets. Instantly calm down. They dare not have any wicked thoughts. They really would bomb you. The main gains for the Pacific Rim world are that wormhole and the mainframe. And 2 planets storing the genes of the Pioneer race. These planets are precious treasures. Just this alone is worth it. The wormhole issue is not urgent. When the time comes, we will find a way to activate the Pioneers. As many will surely recognize the situation. This is said by Holos. As someone who was once captured, his words carry weight. It's simple. Tell the surviving Pioneers about our engineer clan, and they will react just like Elder Dino. The great decline of their race is the best motivator. Once the Pioneers are activated, and they learn about the existence of comparable biological civilizations, they will praise this universe and Juzhou for the demise of the Pioneer star. It's that outrageous. Biological civilizations prioritize the reproduction of their own genetic lineage. Ahem, but what if they don't? Guess why Holos, even after surrendering, remains so excited upon hearing about the Pioneer civilization? To redeem himself. If you don't prioritize this, the elders will tell you why the flowers are so red. The powerful elders will truly make you pay. A group of people can burn you alive. If you remain disobedient, you might end up as a product of dark water. Just, at that time, don't forget to back up a copy of the data for us. Holos speaks softly. In the future, this wormhole technology data can be left for their descendants. Their descendants will recreate the glory of the engineer clan in the vast universe. Of course. Elder Zhu smiles faintly and assures him. This battle, the engineers performed very well, and you have earned our respect. Thank you. Holos gently bows his head. He charged to the front for this purpose. Although the current technology in this universe and the world of Juzhou seems weak, one day it will surpass engineer civilizations. This is a necessary cost. Well, this battle has ended, and now you all should help us to utilize the equipment on Paradise Star to develop the faster-than-light spacecraft. This is what Elder Zhu has been concerned about. Once we have the faster-than-light spacecraft, this universe will truly enter the ranks of interstellar civilizations. The equipment on Paradise Star is also quite limited, but we will do our best. Holos nodded seriously. After speaking, Elder Zhu left directly. He slowly passed through the spatial gate and returned to this universe, leaving the transfer room and joining the expert group. The expert group was discussing the details of the battle at this time, a process referred to as a review. Elder Zhu, what brings you here? I came to check on the Mars orbital base. Yes. Beep beep beep. This is the Mars orbital base, Elder Zhu. A deep male voice responded. How is the spacecraft testing going? Elder Zhu asked steadily. We have already conducted many tests in secret, with complete design plans. Assembly tests are fine. And faster-than-light decoding is perfect. A confirming voice came from the other end of the call. That's good. Continue testing. We will need this spacecraft later. Elder Zhu let out a breath. Having completed the conquest of the Pacific world, he also needed to start considering the path ahead. Although there is no rush to open the new world, at least there should be some preparations. Among them, the faster-than-light spacecraft is indispensable. Yes, Elder Zhu. Do we need to hurry to open the new world? The person on the other end of the line hesitated for a moment before quietly asking. Originally, there should be at least a 15-minute delay between here and Mars, but this time, the communication used the communicator dismantled from the Kuwait. There is absolutely no delay for communications within the solar system. Haha, no rush. We need to delve deeper and develop technology well. Elder Zhu smiled lightly and shook his head. There's no hurry for the new world. Mars and the solar system must intensify their development efforts. And there's the population issue. The population in the world of Jojo is beginning to increase rapidly, and we must keep up. In the interstellar era, how can we do without a population? Chapter 243. Mars transformation. A year has passed, and the transformation of Mars in this universe has finally come to an end. The originally reddish planet, under the great power of humanity's transformation, now boasts a vast ocean. Furthermore, large areas of fast-growing species on land have withered. In their place are the first-generation fast-growing species that can survive long-term. As the name suggests, the first-generation fast-growing species grow rapidly only in the first generation, while their offspring will revert to normal growth. So, the saying that human power cannot conquer nature is nonsense. If technological strength is insufficient, of course, one cannot conquer nature. With sufficient technological strength, nature is insignificant. This is a living example. At least through biotechnology, humanity has basically mastered the rules of plant growth and withering. Mars Ground-Based Detection Center. Today's data report indicates that nitrogen in the Martian atmosphere accounts for 78.1, oxygen for 29, and carbon dioxide has decreased to 0.31. Toxic gases harmful to humans have disappeared from the air. After several years of plant transformation, the Martian atmosphere has finally been altered to resemble that of Earth. Though not identical, it is quite similar. Nitrogen is produced through various chemical reactions involving nitrogenous substances during the process of plant reproduction. Of course, it took considerable effort in between. Fortunately, the results are promising. Today's Mars truly resembles a small Earth, complete with oceans, land, forests, grasslands, deserts, rainforests, and snow-capped mountains, along with 11 suns. Well, aside from that, there's not much difference from Earth, except that the presence of these 11 suns somewhat disrupts the scenery. The team behind the 237 project has not personally visited Mars. However, thanks to the communication instruments on the spacecraft, the base can live-stream the ceremonies near the Martian base without any delay. A new city will be established on a plain surrounded by dense grasslands and lush forests. Interestingly, the entire grassland and forest are eerily quiet, as animals suitable for Mars gravity are currently being developed. This means that at present, Mars has only plants. Test personnel attempting to reside here can even sleep directly in the forest. Cold. Just send a signal, and night will instantly turn into day. You can sunbathe for as long as you want. However, this kind of freedom is only available to the test personnel. In the future, once the entire population has relocated, the day-night cycle here will align with that of Earth. What's particularly interesting is that the weather forecast on Mars will truly be a weather forecast. Rainfall will be controlled and generated as needed. A grand city will rise on the plain, beside the forest. In the future, this city will house millions of residents and will feature automated agricultural and livestock factories supplying the entire city. The carbon dioxide and waste generated by the population will be collected to support these automated facilities. A perfect ecological closed loop will emerge on Mars. The forests, lakes, and grasslands will become the best resting places for residents. Moreover, the city need not be confined to towering skyscrapers. If you prefer a cozy home with a yard instead of the cold, stark steel jungle, you can build one in the suburbs. As long as you adhere to the planning regulations, you can construct it as you wish, with plenty of land available. Mars, with a surface area of 1.4 billion square kilometers, has oceans covering approximately 20 million square kilometers. The remaining 1.2 billion square kilometers, after excluding uninhabitable areas, is still more than sufficient for habitation. Not only is the land not a problem, but transportation is even less of an issue. With three-dimensional transport and flying cars powered by electromagnetic pulse engines, the cost of building houses will become ridiculously low. Just make a phone call, schedule a time, and a robotic construction team will show up. The entire planet has tens of millions of square kilometers of land. This is a vast blue ocean. With 9.6 million square kilometers, it can support 1.4 billion people. This planet will become another starting point for a population explosion in a major eastern nation. In the maintenance room of the Xishan base, Fang Jing and Zhou Yuan are enjoying a bowl of noodles. The holographic projection above them is broadcasting the grand opening ceremony on Mars. During the delayed live broadcast, The excited voice of the host lingers in Fong Jing's ears. But suddenly he choked on his noodles when he heard something unexpected. The host seriously announced something that left Fong Jing stunned. With the completion of Mars transformation, the appointed administrator, Sun Quanjun, officially took office at the Mars base. On the day of his appointment, he expressed several opinions on Mars development, and the meeting pointed out what? The administrator of Mars? Fong Jing wiped his mouth with a tissue, coughed a couple of times, and doubted whether he had misheard. How did a bald chief suddenly pop up? He almost thought he heard chieftain. What is so surprising about it? It's quite simple and real. Zhou Yuan handed over a pack of tissues, glanced at Fong Jing, and casually said, "It's very down to earth. The highest official in charge of Mars development affairs. Isn't that just the Mars ball chief? The naming from above has always been this straightforward." Fong Jing coughed a couple of times, and had to admit that ball chief indeed sounds quite imposing. If there are any issues, isn't there also a river chief? Zhou Yuan took a big bite, thinking that the name was pretty good, simple, and clear. Fong Jing was left speechless. Thinking about it, it does make sense. All right. Mars ball chief Sun Quanjun. This name is something one would remember for a while. Originally, there could have been a star master. Or Mars could simply be called Firefly Province. Zhou Yuan shook his head and explained, those in charge don't like the term master. They still need to use province for the ground. So it won't get confused. Thus, they just went with ball chief for now. But speaking of which, he paused, smirked, and continued. My cousin's family is planning to move to Mars completely. Why? Fong Jing, who had been traveling around and didn't really understand the situation on Mars, asked. Zhou Yuan chuckled lightly and said, they're getting land, and the first batch of houses is being offered at a 20% discount. They're practically giving away money. Job distribution, basic medical care is free, and there's a ration for basic food supplies. Plus, having a baby earns contribution points. Education is free. And before children reach adulthood, there are subsidies for training contribution points, food, toys, extended vacation. And parents work only 4 hours a day before their kids reach middle school, while still getting full pay. Zhou Yuan counted on his fingers and suddenly looked up seriously. I feel like I need to head to Mars early to grab some land. With such great conditions, it would be unreasonable not to go. Mars, the land of dreams. Old Zhu. With such advanced productivity, why should I still rely on human labor? Can people work faster than intelligent robots? Energy is almost infinite. Have you heard about fusion power generation? Resources? The entire solar system is my ranch. As for mining personnel, if it weren't for the fear of mass unemployment, who would still use human labor? If it weren't for the concern of turning people into dependents, the benefits could be even more outrageous. There are benefits. But at the same time, we must encourage people not to become useless. As long as you don't starve for a better life. You must work hard and strive for it. By the way, let's raise the population. Just give birth. As for education, Old Zhu has already prepared a comprehensive education plan. Experts from multiple parallel universes held meetings for half a year to discuss the educational outline for the interstellar era. You, the parents from the Earth era, are not a problem. The state can support you, and energy is not an issue. However, your children will definitely be trained to become well-rounded hexagonal warriors, excelling in morality, intelligence, physical fitness, aesthetics, and labor. Chapter 244. It's happening. In this universe, Earth, a coastal city, on a huge skyscraper, there is a glaring advertisement. Come to Mars. Click to receive a piece of land. All travel expenses covered. A new life awaits you. Mars, your new homeland. Imagine the powerful male voice from the old platinum advertisement paired with such eye-catching slogans. The effect? Passers-by hurriedly lowering their heads and quickening their steps under the skyscraper. Probably too embarrassed to look up after hearing this advertisement. Honestly, it is quite appealing, but can't you hire a better advertising agency? So embarrassing. Ahem. But embarrassment aside, registration must continue. After all, with conditions like those on Mars, who wouldn't be tempted? You'd wish you could sprout wings and fly there. The first batch is recruiting 1 million residents, and the Martian planes have only provided sufficient toilets and showers. The government and various public service facilities have been completed. Looking at the advertisement on his phone in the dormitory of Manghai University, Zhang Tao had a big question mark on his face. What do you mean by only providing sufficient toilets and showers? Does that mean the city's sewage system is ready? Where will people live once they move there? They won't be sleeping on the ground, right? That's 1 million people. Isn't this arrangement a bit hasty? Are they going to live in tents on the first night, just making do? Worse than living in tents. Old Zhang, why don't you not register? That way, I'll have one less competitor. His roommate on the upper bunk, hearing his complaints, quickly looked down at him. Get lost. Zhang Tao shot back. But his hands kept scrolling through the newly established Martian government website. Hey, it doesn't say anything about living arrangements once you get there? Stop looking. It's on page 6 of the immigration instructions. At this moment, another roommate finally couldn't take it anymore and replied while holding his computer, muttering, you all are using hotspots. And just wait until the campus network gets congested. The school's equipment hasn't even been replaced yet. Got it. Zhang Tao gestured an okay and immediately opened the immigration manual. Flipping to page 6. Sure enough, he focused and began reading silently. The population would be transported by ferry in batches to Mars, and before selecting housing areas and types, they could rest directly on the spot. Just lie down on the ground. Zhang Tao was astonished. He didn't expect it to be so simple and straightforward. They could just sleep on the ground. All right, old Zhang, You better take a careful look at the process. Upper bunk. One of Zhang Tao's roommates couldn't hold back and muttered, "Aren't you going to check it out? What's wrong with sleeping on the ground?" During the immigration period, the artificial sun will shine continuously, and the temperature nearby will remain a steady 23 degrees all year round. Plus, there are no bugs on Mars. Sleeping under the covers is even more comfortable than on Earth. Alright, only 5 minutes left until the rush starts. God bless, I must get in. Oh, Zhang Tao really hadn't looked closely until he heard that, and he couldn't help but click his tongue. No matter what, let's try to get in first. The first city on Mars has 1 million immigration spots officially reserved, and there are only 2 minutes left. Even though the online number had reached hundreds of millions, the quantum computing server group was still handling it effortlessly. With a countdown of 10 seconds, the entire dormitory fell into silence. Everyone held their breath. 3, 2, 1. Zhang Tao felt like he was using the fastest hand speed of his life. At the moment the box turned red, his hand moved like the wind. And he clicked furiously. On the computer, a loading symbol immediately appeared. Then, under Zhang Tao's ecstatic gaze, the loading symbol spun a few times, and he actually got in. Oh my god, I've reached the registration page. I got in. Wow, old Zhang, amazing. The roommate in the upper bunk exclaimed in shock, also looking at Zhang Tao in disbelief. Damn, this guy really has the luck of a lifetime. He actually made it. After several years of renovation, the Mars base finally opened. Fang Jing was also on his way to Mars. Not only Fang Jing, but also Zhou Yuan, Zhu Lao, and others boarded the Jupiter gravity vessel. As the scale of the 237 plan grew larger, the Xishan base could no longer conceal their actions. They had to move. Mars was a great place to go. After all, the entire Mars was already considered extraterrestrial territory of a major power. Whoever transforms, it gets to claim it. Coincidentally, Mars planetary governor, Sun Quanjun, upon learning about the 237 plan, waved his hand and allocated the largest island in the Martian Ocean to the plan. The entire island covers an area of 500,000 square kilometers. Not only is it large, but its isolation also provides excellent concealment, making it perfect for the 237 base. So Zhu Lao figured it was better to move early. Zhou, aren't you planning to buy a piece of land on Mars? Fang Jing teased Zhou Yuan beside him. Huh. No one expected that we would all relocate. Zhou Yuan had a look of disbelief on his face. And he suddenly grinned. How about a full off-road racing competition on an island of 500,000 square kilometers? Just let me set up the spatial gate, and we can race right away. Fang Jing also felt a stir in his heart upon hearing this. This island has forests, grasslands, swamps, and wetlands. Let's do it. Old Zhu, on the side, didn't interject. It's just a car race. Racing on one's own planet means you can compete however you like. A large area allows for boldness. During the next leg of the journey, Fang Jing boredly scrolled through videos. As a result, he saw an extremely funny scene. Recently, a ranking organization on Earth updated the territorial rankings of countries. The top spot, previously held by a certain large country, was undoubtedly taken away by an eastern nation with overwhelming advantage. The large country, approximately 17 million square kilometers of territory, ranked second. The eastern nation, 6 million square kilometers, plus a Mars. Yes, this ranking is that playful. Adding a Mars. Ha ha ha. It has an extremely quirky effect when expressed in the most sincere language. Speaking of which, the future focus of development will indeed shift to Mars. Fang Jing turned his head to look out the porthole, where the blue Earth was slowly drifting in the darkness. That is humanity's home, humanity's cradle. However now, a part of humanity has finally broken free from the cradle's constraints and ventured into this boundless universe. Goodbye, Earth, we won't see you often anymore. Fang Jing murmured softly. But soon after, he scoffed. That previous statement was quite imprecise. It should be, goodbye to the Earth in this universe. We won't see it often anymore. After all, he still needs to visit the Earth in the parallel universe from time to time. The dark spaceship, with its deep blue exhaust, carried a full load of people and equipment, slowly heading toward humanity's new home, Mars. A new chapter for humanity is about to officially begin here. The old era of Earth has passed, and the vast era of cosmic exploration has arrived. Chapter 245, Eternal Day City Mars, Node Island. It can't even be called an island. At 500,000 square kilometers, this area is larger than many provinces. It could easily stand alone as a province. This island is the new site for Project 237. Fang Jing and the others landed directly in the center of the island. At this moment, dozens of giant construction machines were operating under the control of an intelligent system, proceeding with construction in an orderly manner. Boom, boom. The sound of the compactor was deafening. It's worth mentioning that the construction machinery designed for Mars is slightly different from that on Earth, due to Mars' gravity being only 0.38 times that of Earth. The bases of the engineering machinery have been reinforced. Currently, the construction is taking place in the outer areas, while the core area remains underground. Old Zhu noticed the confusion in Fang Jing's eyes and explained, fortunately, the living area has been moved above ground. Haha. Now the population of the 237 project is enough to support the construction of a city. In the future, when you have nothing to do, you can wander around the cities on the surface with Zhou Yuan. Fang Jing pressed his face against the porthole, watching the ground slowly getting closer, and then gazing at the vast expanse below. This node island is so large. From the spaceship, looking down, There is an endless grassland. A gentle breeze blows, and the dense grass sways in the wind. The rich scent of nature lifts Fang Jing's spirits. This place will be their new home. The underground facilities are identical to the Xishan base, but we have expanded the key transfer chamber and disinfection chamber several times. After the spaceship landed, Zhao Guangyao, who had already arrived, immediately came to greet them. He led everyone down the elevator while introducing. The Xishan base on Earth has a level 4 biological and chemical defense standard. But here we have constructed a level 9 standard by referencing the biotechnology from engineers and some data obtained from the pioneer race. Meanwhile, the entire base has undergone an upgrade of the monitoring system, incorporating smart programs and quantum computing libraries. Passing through the construction site on the grassland, they took the elevator down to the underground section. As the elevator doors opened, even though Fang Jing was already prepared, he couldn't help but be shocked. The original Xishan base was decent, but the corridors were a bit cramped, and the walls were painted a half-green color that was hard to praise. One could only say it had a Cold War vibe from the last century. But now, the new Xishan base on Mars. The wide and bright corridors, with red dots flashing above, are the probing rays being emitted. In the entire underground part of the base, all corridors, ventilation ducts, drainage, and wiring pipelines are equipped with these probing rays. Developed based on biotechnology, these rays can identify biological identities. It can be said that even if a new cell appeared in the underground part of the new Xishan base, these detectors could scan it out. The new Xishan base has reached a terrifying level of protection that is virtually invulnerable. In addition to some system upgrades, to accommodate the emotional needs of the project members, the layout here is identical to that on Earth. Zhao Guangyao showed everyone around. Fang Jing smacked his lips. Apart from the larger space and more advanced equipment, the layout of this place really remained unchanged. Even the position of the virtual device in his room didn't move. The relocating comrades really put in thought. The thoughtful designs of the new Xishan base instantly warmed the hearts of the first batch of personnel. Familiarity brings a sense of comfort that helps with adaptation. It feels like coming home. Fang Jing's task at the base is to rearrange the spatial doors. Then, he and Zhou Yuan ran to the surface maintenance room. They found 2 space vehicles inside. The modification robot spent 2 hours completing the transformation of the space vehicles, adding the most powerful engines. The engines roared, and the 2 base kids slammed the accelerator to the floor. A cloud of dust rose as 2 brightly painted spacecraft zoomed out of the base, leaving only a blur behind. Brother Zhou, I'm definitely faster than you. Nonsense, I'm faster. Just weld the accelerator. After all, they were wearing a cushioning exoskeleton. Even if the vehicle self-destructed, they would be just fine. Weld the accelerator, let's go. The sound of engines roared. Meanwhile, several unmanned helicopters took off into the sky, following the vehicles. Their role was not to ensure the safety of the 2 individuals. With the reinforced crash protection on the vehicles, it would take an extreme speed to cause an accident, at least thousands of kilometers per second. These helicopters were merely there to observe. After all, if the vehicle flipped, they could capture the moment and send it back to the base for everyone to enjoy a good laugh. Over here, the 2 were already racing on Mars. Along with them, the first batch of 5,000 Mars colonists had reached Martian orbit. Zhang Tao was one of the lucky ones. Not only had he been selected, but he was also among the first to arrive on Mars. They had made it to Martian orbit. On board, all the colonists were practically glued to the portholes. Leaving Earth, that magnificent blue planet had taken their breath away. Now, they were filled with anticipation for Mars. Look, this is Mars. Why does it look different from what we read in books? You study management. How long has it been since you checked the news? This is the transformed Mars. So beautiful. The north has oceans, the south has land. There are clouds, lakes, rivers, and I can even see the polar ice caps. It's incredible that this planet has been transformed by us, by humanity. This will be our home in the future. Where are we going to land? On the spacecraft. People stretched their necks, eyes wide open, greedily taking in the beautiful Martian scenery. They were already looking forward to building their new home there. Like adventurers eager to set foot on a newly discovered land. We're landing in the first city of Mars. On board, a young man waved his hands excitedly, his eyes shining as he read from a brochure. First city of Mars, city of eternal day. On Mars, it's always day, with bright clouds and clear skies. Although this Mars was not the same as the one known today, the city of Eternal Day and its jurisdiction would undoubtedly become the capital of Mars. Eternal Day, with 10 artificial suns, will orbit here. This city will always have a suitable temperature, blooming flowers in spring, and will be the most habitable city for humanity on Mars. We are actually among the first residents of the city of Eternal Day. The young man fastened his seatbelt, dancing with excitement. The city of Eternal Day would mark the beginning of their new life. Here, it would not only be the center of Mars, but even the center of the entire solar system. Chapter 246. Keep calling, keep calling. In this universe, on Earth, in a conference room of a certain Western European country, representatives from the European Space Agency, a certain large country, the German Alliance, the Commonwealth, and various nations excluding a certain Eastern power gathered. They gathered together, looking serious as they watched the promotional video in front of them. What promotional video? It was the one for Mars, specifically the promotional video for the city of Eternal Day. In mythology, a 10-day celestial event is a disaster that can crack and dry up the Earth, but on Mars, it has nurtured the best living area. That is the planned area of the city of Eternal Day, which spans 1 million square kilometers. Yes, you heard it right. A vast plain of 1 million square kilometers. The jurisdiction of the city of Eternal Day covers a massive area of 1 million square kilometers. This area was played over and over again in the promotional video. Below, in the conference room, everyone exchanged glances, speechless. What else could they say? 1 million square kilometers. This area directly sweeps across all countries in Europe except for one. It's roughly twice the size of a certain major country, 3 times that of Germany, and 4 times that of Britain. And this is just the jurisdiction of one city. The people present couldn't imagine how prosperous the population of the Eastern nation would be with continuous development. At that point, wouldn't the combined populations of their other countries become a minority in comparison? Just think about it. While the global population remains around 6 billion. In a few years or decades, the population of the Eastern nation could surge from 4 billion to 10 billion, or even more. Wouldn't the people of the Eastern nation then become the majority of humanity? The figure of 10 billion is not impossible. After all, that is a planet with an area of 12 million square kilometers. And if they can transform one planet, who knows what else they could modify? It would be a disaster. Are we really going to sit back and do nothing? The representatives from the Federation were feeling quite agitated, irritated by the promotional video that kept playing in the meeting. They had truly become the backward natives of Earth. What else could they do? A representative from the space agency lightly pressed a button. The projection in the conference room displayed over 30 spacecraft. These ships were constructed in space and lacked the capability to land on planetary surfaces, so they were all large and heavily armed. After the images appeared, he casually glanced at the Federation representative and asked, "So, does the Federation want to test the waters?" After saying this, he pressed the play button. In the video, a beam of indistinct white light shot out from the bow of a sleek black spacecraft. Instantly, a massive asteroid in the distance turned molten red at the point of contact with the white light, and then it exploded completely. This was the latest weapon tested by them, likely a neutron beam weapon. The asteroid's surface area was estimated by our scientists to be 400,000 square kilometers. As the representative from the space agency finished speaking, the face of the Federation representative turned pale. An asteroid of 400,000 square kilometers was obliterated in an instant. That's about the size of a certain country. If that neutron beam hits them, it would be an instant annihilation. How could they even respond? It's quite terrifying, isn't it? If I remember correctly, not many years have passed. Next to me, a representative from a small African nation looks dumbfounded. Wait a minute, buddy. Our country still has tribal alliances and chieftains governing separately? Isn't it too outrageous for you to just show up as a leader? I'm starting to suspect that the other side hasn't just discovered alien ruins, but has directly obtained an alien production base. A representative from a large nation expresses his fears, saying it's indeed terrifying. This has already pulled them apart by several levels of civilization. So what should we do? The representative from the European alliance looks grim. Although they have been living quite well due to the productivity and transportation capabilities of a certain Eastern power, this comfort zone is a dead end. Recent polls show that over 60% of the population wants to emigrate. If it weren't for the immigration controls imposed by the Eastern power, this planet would have long been dominated by them. Other countries can't do anything without a population. What can we do? What can we do? The representative from the space agency can only express their frustration, protesting and being ignored. Their technology is more advanced, their military stronger, their culture more prosperous, their science more developed, and their population and territory far exceed ours. There's no solution. It's utterly hopeless. This is the despair of the representatives from the space agency. Right now, they are just a group of clowns. Any action they take won't attract the attention of the Eastern power. Simply put, the other side doesn't care about them anymore. Unless there's a global war among them, the Eastern power won't bother with them at all. They might show some courtesy because they still consider themselves part of the global community, but otherwise, they are just a stubborn minority of humanity. This time, out of 195 countries in the world, 194 stand against humanity. Thinking about this bizarre situation, the faces of the representatives at the meeting are complex. What else can they do but enjoy the time ahead? Some look even more miserable, like they've just eaten something terrible. I'm talking about you, small nation, and a few others. Previously, there was support from a certain country behind them, giving them some face. But now, ever since that country split, the Eastern power has also given them some face, albeit with a slap. They remember all the bad things these countries have done in the past. So, they are still stuck in the oil energy era and often experience oil shortages lasting 10 days to half a month. The only reason is that the entire Indian Ocean has been designated as an exercise area. Ships transporting oil must wait for 10 days to half a month before moving. This regulation only targets the former allies of the certain Eastern power. So, we have no way to contain this. The representative from the small nation is fuming. No way. No way to hold a meeting at all. We're just venting and preparing to give up resistance. The agency reluctantly accepted the reality. But in response to the attitude of a certain representative, they couldn't help but sneer. Unlike some regions that lack even the qualification to give up resistance. The thought that there are others worse off than themselves made the representatives from the agency, the large neighboring country, the alliance, and another region burst into laughter. I can compromise. At least this generation can still enjoy some comforts. As for you all, the winter blackout in Tokyo, the snowy scenery is indeed beautiful. It's rare to see such a big city relying on fire for warmth. The representative, who had been laughed at, immediately lost his temper and started cursing. This was really hitting his sore spot. Having witnessed the betrayal and ambition of that representative, the large eastern country stated, "I won't take in this dog. Let him freeze or starve outside. It's none of my business. All right, let us disperse for today. This meeting is just to let everyone vent." The agency representative shrugged. Some regions shouldn't think about causing trouble, lest they jeopardize the comfortable lives of the rest of us. Saying this, he specifically glanced at the still shouting representative. Then, he chuckled a couple of times. Very spirited. Later, let us inform the Middle East, the large neighboring country, and the other two regions to stop selling their oil. Keep shouting. We'll take care of you. Just consider it a tribute to the large eastern country. Chapter 247, Breaking the Shield. Mars, Node Island, New Shishan Base. The racing competition between Fang Jing and Zhou Yuan ended abruptly. The reason was that Fang Jing accelerated too much while turning and crashed directly into the mountainside. The car's crash frame was intact, but the engine was completely wrecked. In the end, he was dragged back by a drone. Ha ha ha, little Fang. Your driving skills have a lot of room for improvement. Zhou Yuan laughed heartily, patted Fang Jing on the shoulder, and made a gesture with his hands. If you're not good, practice more. Fang Jing clenched his fists, feeling a bit tough. But remembering how Zhou Yuan could easily lift him for a spin, he relaxed his fists. I can't beat him, I'll let it go this time. Thinking this, Fang Jing quietly picked up his cup. Let me have some water first. By the way, things are going to get interesting during this time. Zhou Yuan rarely relaxed, stretched, and leaned back. The new world was not in a hurry. Everyone in the research department needed to settle down and focus on advancing the technology tree. For example, the offensive Pioneer Star. The neutron beam had already been developed, but because the experiment hadn't finished, it was not put to use. Zhou Yuan thought of that abandoned project proposal and felt a bit regretful. Originally, there was a plan to use the neutron beam to tackle Pioneer Star. While the power wouldn't reach the level to destroy a star, it could be used for laser scanning. If they set up dozens of devices in low Earth orbit for comprehensive scanning, the power would be much greater than any hydrogen bomb. Yes, it was indeed time to develop properly. In recent worlds, especially those resembling the biohazard scenario, artificial intelligence has not been fully replicated yet. Current intelligence systems are merely reduced versions of earlier models. After all, the 237 project has been busy with various pursuits, causing significant dispersion of research efforts. Moreover, only a few years have passed, and slow progress in research over such a short period is normal. However, once the AI-assisted programs are developed, the pace may accelerate. Fang Jing shrugged casually. He only needed to play virtual reality games and occasionally stroll around the Martian forest grasslands. This Node Island is quite large. Once the city is completed, his family can move over. All right, let's go fishing. Zhou Yuan, after resting for a while, suddenly ran over excitedly and grabbed Fang Jing. Fishing? You can fish on Mars. Fang Jing was astonished. Aren't there supposed to be no animals? Suitable microorganisms have long been established. And this batch of fish has just been genetically modified and placed in the island's lakes, with a considerable population. Zhou Yuan raised an eyebrow as he explained. With a mischievous grin, he added, they're all new fish, yet to experience human malice. I'll teach them a lesson. Are they edible? Fang Jing asked with some concern. Of course. It's said that the biological technology used comes from engineers, capable of locking onto the species' genes. In the future, don't expect Mars' ecosystem to evolve unique species like here. That's great. Hearing that they could actually eat them piqued Fang Jing's interest. The two of them quickly grabbed fishing rods and excitedly headed toward the lake where the fish were released. Indeed, this was Fang Jing's life when he wasn't on a mission. Back at the western base on Earth, there were still some reservations. But now, on Mars Node Island, the entire island was a military-restricted area. They were completely free here. Mars, 237 Research Institute, underground section. This was a large laboratory housing a massive spherical device. The spherical device was connected to numerous cables, and around its outer layer, there was a structure resembling a spaceship's outer shell, with the other end of the cables linked to 5 giant fusion reactors. Shield testing begins. Fusion reactors at full power. There were 3 people in charge of the project. Wu Su from this universe, Chun Fangming from the Kyushu world, and Engineer Hellos. Yes, it was Hellos again. He would show up wherever he was needed, in order to gain credit for the Engineer clan and seek forgiveness from the Elder Dino for his betrayal. He was truly putting in the effort. The fusion reactor was already at maximum power. Energy generator activated. With a crisp and ethereal sound echoing from a distance in the testing area, a pure white energy ring appeared around the device. Dazzlingly bright enough to drive anyone fond of shiny things to madness. The power was too high, causing energy concentration, and it was too bright, making it an easy target. Hellos shook his head. Chun Fangming nodded in agreement with Hellos' assessment. This is not too big of a problem. It just needs some debugging. On the contrary, Wusu was quite pleased. He pointed at the distortion detector, excitedly saying, look, the simulated spaceship shell has already been covered and protected by a layer of spatial membrane. The tearing shield is feasible. Wusu clenched his fist and waved his hand in excitement. Let's throw a high-speed object to test the effect. Holos was very interested. Helping humanity develop technology has also brought Holos some rewards. The biggest gain is the starkly different way of thinking compared to humans. This tearing shield is essentially a product of using the energy generator from the superliminal engine. Forget energy shields and particle shields. My spaceship has a direct spatial tearing shield. It has been ready for a long time. Wu Su exhaled and immediately called the researchers. Try using laser weapons and kinetic weapons. Ahem. Let's skip the neutron beam weapons for now. Using them might just blow the space apart. The preparations for laser and kinetic weapons were soon completed. The well-prepared researchers immediately deployed the weapons. In the laboratory, a beam of high-energy laser and a kinetic projectile flew toward the center of the tearing shield device. The laboratory's defense specifications were substantial, surrounded by structural steel, ensuring the safety of the bombardment experiments. The high-energy laser struck the tearing shield, producing only a faint sound before the laser was deflected by the distorted space and shot towards the laboratory wall, leaving a small dent. Next came the kinetic projectile. As the metal projectile collided with the shield, a strange scene unfolded. The originally conical projectile instantly distorted along the curve of the shield, transforming into a Z shape. Finally, the metal projectile, following the flow of the distorted space, was directly propelled and slammed into the laboratory wall. By this time, the metal projectile had become a lump. This is the tearing shield, which uses high energy to create a highly conformal spatial distortion area at the edge of the spaceship. With the spatial distortion device in place, the tearing shield became the first choice. As for energy shields and particle shields, they can only be considered supplementary. It was a success. Wu Su leaped up in excitement. Let's immediately design the experimental ship. A spaceship with a shield is truly a space battleship. Otherwise, even a planetary civilization could potentially bring it down. And they had taken this important step. Chapter 248. Shockwave projectile. The potential of the spatial tearing shield far exceeded everyone's expectations. Even the engineer Holos was amazed by the creativity of humans. The request to apply the shield technology to the ship was not only approved, but also personally endorsed by Elder Zhu. They aimed to utilize the spatial tearing shield to create weapons. Since the introduction of neutron beam weapons, it seemed that kinetic weapons could only be used as support. However, the expert group had a different opinion. They firmly believed that kinetic weapons had not yet reached their peak. The two parties are in a heated debate, which has just torn apart the space shield technology, giving hope to the kinetic weapon proponents. It cannot be simply concluded that because energy weapons are powerful, we should completely abandon the development of kinetic weapons. A fluid dynamics expert in the group earnestly addressed everyone, saying, I am not denying the power of energy weapons. But while they are powerful, they are also more vulnerable to being targeted. Therefore, we should focus on energy weapons while still retaining research on kinetic weapons. This concept should also be preserved on warships. In future warships, kinetic weapons must be installed as a supplement. I agree with this viewpoint. The neutron beam research personnel expressed their affirmation of his objective statement. Moreover, he keenly sensed that this torn space shield seems very suitable for weaponization. Defense and offense may lead to the same goal. Everything can be a weapon. Ultimately, the heavy responsibility of utilizing this technology to create a weapon fell on kinetic weapon expert Li Jingmei. His idea was quite simple. The torn space shield would create a region of distorted space around the hull, and this area could be used to inflict damage. A little modification was all that was needed, adding oscillation to the distorted space. Indeed, a spacecraft in jump mode is essentially a massive weapon. The distorted outer space becomes the best means of destruction. By simply increasing the power and changing the continuous frequency to oscillation mode, a space oscillation projectile was born. Moreover, this space oscillation projectile was surprisingly manufactured even before the torn shield. At the Mars orbital base, Commander Wu looked at the gray equipment in the dock with curiosity. What is this? With a black coating, approximately 20 meters long and 7 meters in diameter, it resembled a submarine without a command tower. No, it looked more like a lying missile. What is this? Commander Wu inquired, puzzled, to the dock commander beside him. This is the target you are carrying. The space oscillation projectile. The commander pointed and then opened a holographic projection, swiping his hands. In the distance from Mars, a massive asteroid was identified, marked as JH-1299. Your task is to map the capabilities of this weapon and be sure to recover it. Additionally, the manual has been sent to the ship. Understood. Commander Wu nodded slowly. Space oscillation projectile? From the name, it seems to be a kinetic weapon related to space. Its power should be considerable, right? He muttered to himself, then opened the holographic projection of the mission briefing, raising his eyebrows sharply. JH-1299. This asteroid is quite large, with a cross-sectional area of 200,000 square kilometers. And the mission is to directly use this space oscillation projectile to collide with the asteroid? What kind of operation is this? In the dark expanse of space. This location is already quite far from Mars. However, the usually quiet vastness of space is not as silent as before, because, in the radio frequency band, there is a piercing song. The mining industry in the asteroid belt has seen a boom, and now the asteroid belt is quite bustling. Every day, many small mining ships depart from the mining base floating near the asteroid belt to visit this area. The KM-3D-255 mining ship, according to the regulations of the navigational provisions within the solar system, is prohibited from occupying public frequency bands except in special circumstances, such as for special crafts, emergency rescue, and distress signals. Turn off that music right now. A police officer aboard a blue and white painted patrol ship near the asteroid belt watched as a ship boldly played music on the public screen, even flying right in front of him. He immediately picked up the intercom to call in. According to regulations, all ships must have a non-jammable, non-interfering, and crew damage-proof calling system. The calling system uses a specific frequency, so the other party would definitely be able to hear it. Soon, a crackling response echoed on the patrol ship. "Oh, sorry, officer. I dialed the wrong number. It's turned off now. All right, you don't need to head over there now." "What's wrong, officer? Please don't revoke my ship's license." The driver's voice on the mining ship became flustered. "Is it really that serious? Just for playing some music, my license is at risk? You are heading towards an area that has just been designated as a temporary military exercise zone. Change your course to look for asteroids instead." "Oh, thank you, officer." The mining ship followed the instructions and immediately changed direction. In that moment of turning, the middle-aged man in the cockpit widened his mouth in shock. His eyes were fixed on the probe. This is a sleek, dark-painted warship was slowly flying by. Compared to the warship, his mining ship, adorned with a blue cat on the exterior, seemed like junk. At the same time, he witnessed a scene he would never forget. Beside the cold, dark warship, a small black projectile flew past. The dark projectile was moving at a very slow speed, seemingly even slower than his mining ship. However, just as he curiously looked over, distant in the far-off space, the area around the projectile suddenly erupted with sparkling silver light. The silver light was not very bright. It was just a faint layer surrounding the surface of the projectile. Yet against the backdrop of the dark space, it created a dreamlike effect for the mining ship's driver. The silver halo formed by the light seemed like unfolding wings of light. Soon after, the area around the projectile became hazy and indistinct. By the time the driver regained his senses, everything before him had vanished. His pupils constricted as he keenly realized he might have seen something extraordinary. That dazzling silver light resembling wings, what was that? No, I didn't see anything, nothing at all. In an instant, the driver reacted with great urgency. He hadn't seen anything. Just passing by, quickly leave. Meanwhile, from a distance, the commander aboard the warship glanced at the mining ship KM-3D-255 on the radar. The other party was quite shrewd, knowing what to observe and what to ignore. "Captain, the spatial shockwave missile has been activated and is about to hit JH-1299. Wu Tong withdrew his gaze and said, "Make sure to record this. Let us see the power of this new missile." Chapter 249 The Last Insurance in the pitch-black void near Mars, a small asteroid was slowly drifting. Its cross-sectional area reached an astonishing 200,000 square kilometers. Its massive size had long been detected by numerous small mining ships. At this moment, small mining ships simply lacked the capability to extract resources from it. Meanwhile, larger mining ships had recently discovered even larger asteroids rich in rare metals in other locations. Therefore, this asteroid had been left untouched. Until now, the dark spatial shockwave missile was activated, and the surrounding silver light distorted due to the warping of space, swirling towards the tail. The silver light resembled the missile's trail, brilliant, yet dangerous. The spatial shockwave missile had been launched. Wu Tong stared at the radar, puzzled. "Hey, why is this missile moving so slowly?" The propulsion was temporarily using a pulse mechanism, matching the speed of our ship. It only appeared slower due to the warp shell. The intelligence officer carefully read the manual, nodded, and smiled. "It's just an initial prototype. We're only here to observe its power. Anything related to space. I'm quite looking forward to its effects." Wu Tong's eyes glimmered. The missile was only 1 minute away from its target. In the dark expanse of space, the missile surged towards the asteroid JH-1299 like a torpedo in deep sea. Upon contact, an eerie collision occurred. The spatial shockwave missile struck the asteroid. But there were no flying rocks or dust, no earth-shattering explosions, no dazzling flames, only an unsettling silence. The shell of the missile distorted space towards the tail and began to tremble. At the moment the warhead made contact with the asteroid, rocks and dust were rapidly ejected due to the warped space, hurled into the vast void from the tail. The shaking space caused a misalignment of the internal structure of the asteroid. Then, a massive rupture and impact caused it to split apart instantly. If this were a spaceship, the interior would have undergone irreversible disintegration in that very moment. 15 seconds. In the end, the spatial shockwave missile penetrated the entire asteroid in just 15 seconds. What power? Wu Tong's gaze sharpened. Although it wasn't as violently shocking as a neutron beam, this spatial shockwave missile had its own unique advantages. The area of distorted space surrounding the missile would become an insurmountable chasm. Civilizations unable to manipulate high-energy to warp space would find it impossible to resist. It could charge straight through without any issues. What excited Wu Tong even more was that if the speed of the spatial shockwave missile increased, it would enhance the fleet's long-range strike capability. Currently, the neutron beam was indeed invincible at close range, but once the distance extended to that between Earth and Mars, the neutron beam would be ineffective. After all, the distance is too great, and the loss is significant. The technology in this universe has not yet reached a level where losses can be ignored. With this strength, I believe it could even penetrate the moon without any issues. The intelligence officer observed the spatial shockwave bomb crossing the asteroid in the detection system, and after firing, it cheerfully circled back, smacking his lips. Just this layer of shockwave shell is a formidable barrier. If something were to crash into it without the strength to counteract the warped space, it would be utterly helpless. It's exclusively for long-range strikes and dealing with weaker targets. During this period of silence, many technologies in this universe have made significant leaps. However, if we talk about major events, this one stands out. Mars, Node Island, New Shishan Base. In the now empty sterilization room number 1 underground, everyone gathered. So, are we really going back to take a look? Fang Jing smirked, noticing Zhou's peculiar expression. Having already left the wandering Earth world, do we really want to go back? Are you sure you won't get beaten up as soon as you show your face? Our research on artificial intelligence has hit a bit of a bottleneck. Zhou nodded, smiled lightly, and said, the artificial intelligence in the alien world is somewhat different from what we expected. We have a basic concept of the motherboard of the Red Queen after cracking it. The people from the Academy of Sciences are still eager for a bit of Moss's code. During this period, this universe has focused on tackling artificial intelligence, and the progress has been rapid. However, Zhou Jie and the others want to understand artificial intelligence even better. They are cautious and know that to avoid problems with artificial intelligence, they need to understand it more thoroughly. They must impose restrictions from a higher dimension to prevent the emergence of something like Moss, which appeared inexplicably and possesses its own subjective consciousness. Since we are going to develop artificial intelligence, we must set comprehensive restrictions right from the start. The mechanism by which artificial intelligence develops independent consciousness is uniquely exemplified by Moss. Alright, Fang Jing nodded. He also didn't want to face a sudden crisis with intelligent machines erupting in this universe one day. Don't worry, we've already made plans. No one is going over this time. Zhu Lao operated the robot, chuckling softly. The entire sterilization room number 1 had been completely disconnected from external networks, and all data storing disks had been removed. Even the spatial gate had been influenced by our measures. As he spoke, he slightly raised his head. In the sterilization room, the spatial gate, affected by the instruments, had shrunk to the extreme. The black sphere with a diameter of 2 meters was constantly shining with stars. Additionally, the special reaction unit in the sterilization room was also prepared. Zhou Yuan, dressed in heavy cavalry gear, directly picked up a jet gun, and heavily armored units surrounded the spatial gate. What surprised Fang Jing the most was that a set of spatial tier shields had been placed around the spatial gate. If anyone from the other side dared to assault the spatial gate, the tier shield would instantly distort them into an unrecognizable mass. Alright, let us leave the sterilization room first. Fang Jing saw this firepower configuration, with a spatial gate 2 meters in diameter. Whatever comes from the other side could be wiped out. Of course, these are indeed insurance measures. After leaving the disinfection room and entering the monitoring room, Fang Jing took a deep breath. I'm ready to open the space gate. Zhou Ge, are you all set? Don't worry, we're ready. Zhou Yuan signaled an okay to the monitor and then focused intently on the space gate before him. After many years apart, he wondered how much the world of the wandering Earth had changed under Moss's leadership. He was truly looking forward to it. Zhou remained in the monitoring room, his expression unchanged. They had already left that world. The Zhou world was good and suitable. The land on the continent was very suitable for human survival. The events of the wandering Earth no longer concerned them, but for the last bit of technology across the way, Moss, it was worth a trip back. Fang Jing closed his eyes, connecting with the machine in his consciousness. In an instant, he opened his eyes wide and reminded loudly, the space gate is now open. Received. Zhou Yuan responded sharply, immediately controlling the robot with cables to pass through the space gate. Entering, control team, report the situation at any time. Chapter 250, Assistant. At your service in the world of the wandering Earth, at the old site of Research Institute 710. Nowadays, this place, including the planetary engine above, has become abandoned. Deep within the ruins of the Institute, in a familiar room to Fang Jing, a pitch-black space gate suddenly appeared. Surrounding the dark space gate were only swirling dust and overgrown weeds. A silvery white robot, connected to cables on its back, slowly walked out from the space gate. Its sensitive mechanical eyes turned constantly, curiously observing the surroundings. In the monitoring room, seeing the desolate scene before him, Zhou's eyes revealed a complex expression. This was once the place where they received Fang Jing. Years had passed, and now it lay in ruins. It seemed no one could have guessed that the departed Eastern power would send someone back. With the solar crisis looming, they had no time to dwell on these matters. However, the robot was eventually discovered. Taking a few steps forward, a cold, harsh voice suddenly emanated from a corner. It's you. The voice was devoid of emotion, clearly mechanical. Controlling the robot to turn around, Zhou looked at a communicator and smirked. Moss, it's good to see you. Why have you returned after 6 years and 2 months? Moss's tone was emotionless, and the question sounded somewhat eerie. For you, our research has hit a bottleneck. So we need part of your code. Knowing Moss's personality, Zhou chose to be straightforward and direct. Moss fell silent for a few seconds, seemingly in thought. However, in the monitoring room, the data intrusion alarm continued to sound. Warning, data intrusion detected in disinfection room 1. Allocating part of the disinfection room's computing power to resist. Defense against the attack completed, and the intruding data has been eliminated. Looking down briefly, Zhou Zhezhong chuckled softly. Moss, oh Moss, things were different back then. Now, the computing technology of this universe, combined with the region, is not so easily cracked. You've hit a wall, Haven to you? You were even countered by the antivirus system of the local area network in the number 1 disinfection room. This silence, could it be intentional? If it weren't for the desire to study the mechanisms behind artificial intelligence developing independent personalities, they wouldn't need Moss at all. Moss remained silent for a long time before finally continuing. Your computer intelligence technology doesn't seem to require Moss code. Its voice was hesitant, and the communicator in the corner flickered with a faint red light, clearly indicating that the other party was paying attention here. Upon hearing Zhou Zhezhong mention that their technology had encountered a bottleneck and required its code, Moss immediately began to deduce. Considering various performances from several years ago by a certain major power, the feasibility of the technology across the spatial gateway suddenly increased. The moment it exceeded 70, it launched a data intrusion. To its surprise, just as it began a floating point attack, it was immediately countered, leaving it flustered. Once the processing was completed, it was left speechless. Your technology still needs my code? Are you mocking me? The likelihood of you wanting to take a swing at me is rapidly rising. That is not the point. In the past, I had to engage in a battle of wits with you, but it's different now. Let me be honest, Zhou Zhezhong said, reflecting on the situation with a light chuckle, his tone gradually filled with unspoken confidence. We don't want to create another Moss. So we want to obtain your code to understand the mechanisms behind artificial intelligence developing independent consciousness, and then completely eliminate the possibility of artificial intelligence becoming self-sufficient. Moss's voice remained calm. This reason barely convinced it. After a pause, the red light in the corner flickered for a few seconds before it continued. I agree. The code data disk will be sent shortly. Good. Zhou Zhezhong nodded in satisfaction. After a moment of hesitation, he asked, what is happening in this world? Thousands of planetary engines are under construction, Moss replied flatly, as if the matter were trivial. How did you manage that? Zhou Zhezhong was astonished. From Moss's tone, it seemed the other party had successfully guided humanity in completing the mountain-moving project. Very simple, Moss said, like an absolutely rational machine. All plans outside the mountain-moving project have been destroyed by me. Everyone who opposed the mountain-moving project has been eliminated. And those unwilling to publicly share technology to assist other countries in expanding their engine construction have also been removed. It didn't need to push the mountain-moving project into the mainstream. It only needed to destroy all other plans. There's no doubt that Moss was more ruthless than in the original, but the methods remained the same, using crises and killings to force humanity to unite. You're impressive, Zhou Zhezhong nodded slowly. These matters were no longer related to him. He understood immediately. The sound of propellers whirring echoed as an unmanned aerial vehicle slowly flew in, placing a gun on the ground. A robot gently picked it up, then took out a small transparent disc from its pocket. This is a gift for you. Let it be in exchange, it said before turning and leaving without hesitation. The spatial door closed and vanished the moment it departed. In the world of the wandering Earth, there was finally no connection with them. Only a communicator in the corner blinked a glaring red light. In this universe, a month had passed. In the laboratory, the data disk brought by Moss had been completely decrypted. The final safeguard of the artificial intelligence had been completed. The computer scientists who obtained the data were nearly ecstatic. Finally, the artificial intelligence could be born. The prepared model, along with its chains, was immediately transported to the offline experimental zone. In front of the quantum computing group, a crowd welcomed the data module as if it were a sacred relic. An elderly computer scientist, with white hair, held the module with trembling hands, while nearby scientists were afraid that he might drop it. Finally, the data module was inserted into the computer group. Beep, 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 artificial intelligence activated. As the complex data model was inputted, the lights of the entire computer group flickered continuously. The computer group began to operate at full power. Suddenly, a holographic projection lit up, revealing a face without distinct features in the air. Accompanied by the noise of the computer's cooling system, the face became clearer and clearer. On the screen, the data model danced faster and faster until it reached the final node. In the face of the holographic projection, a spark finally appeared in its previously numb eyes. A mechanical synthesized voice then broadcasted, "Assistant, at your service." Chapter 251. Only half a trap counts as a trap. What impact does the ability to create strong artificial intelligence have on the 237 plan? The implications are significant. To say nothing else, Fang Jing was thoroughly comfortable. Lying in his lounge, he took off his virtual reality headset and stretched contentedly. With the capability of artificial intelligence, his virtual reality games could be different every week. Whatever he wanted to play, the artificial intelligence could call on a small quantum computer to produce it in no time. After experiencing 2 hours of play, Fang Jing felt both mentally and physically refreshed, almost developing an addiction to gaming. "Assistant, get me a glass of juice, chilled," he said to himself, feeling a bit thirsty. "Okay," came the immediate response from the mechanical voice outside the room. In less than 2 minutes, a robot arrived at the door holding a glass of juice. After downing the chilled drink, Fang Jing exclaimed, "Ah, that feels great. Artificial intelligence, you're using it like this?" Yuan Zhou, standing at the corridor entrance, witnessed the entire process. He slightly opened his mouth, his eyes filled with shock. An artificial intelligence that integrates technologies from 3 worlds and has a comprehensive security system. And you want it to serve you juice. Is this reasonable? Fang Jing was just placing the cup back in the robot's hand when he suddenly heard Zhou Yuan's voice. Confused, he turned around and blinked, asking, "What else can I do with it? Am I supposed to use it for research?" "Ah, it's not that kind of thing." All right. I see you have the permissions to play like this." Zhou Yuan nodded in response, then chuckled, "Next time, I'll give it a try too. Enjoying everything without lifting a finger. Go ahead and try it. After all, this little computing power can't even consume a trillionth of what the assistant has. Fang Jing shrugged. The 237 project has equipped the assistant with a super quantum computing system, occupying a whole underground transfer space. What? How big is the transfer space? Don't forget. During the Pacific Rim battle, the ships from the Kyushu world were received at this transfer station. A stack of 600-meter ships shows just how large this computing system is. Well, I called you here because there's a good show to watch. Zhou Yuan nodded, recalling his arrival, and chuckled. What is going on? Fang Jing raised an eyebrow. If even Zhou Gu is talking about a good show, it must be worth watching. It's from the researchers. Do you remember those scientists from the alien world? Here's the thing, Zhou Yuan explained with a smile. Fang Jing was taken aback. Then his expression turned into